gonna share that on Twitter.
What's up?
Nothing much at the moment. Just setting up the streaming setup so it looks kind of sensible. We just started streaming. We are live now. I will drop that into chat. That should be
a party at my house.
How'd that go?
I'm doing this. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Really
Wait,
fun.
what time is it? Where are you from?
Oh, it's like 2 a.m. where I'm from.
Amazing. Oh, are you actually from? Was it Romania?
Yeah, I'm actually in Romania right now.
Okay.
Though I
Do you
was
live
also.
there, or?
Yeah, so I live in Romania right now, but I was also a student in the UK.
Cool.
Yep.
There's the link. Then you can drop it on Twitter.
Yep. Just did that.
Hope that utilitarianism is not a worse title SEO wise than ethics discussion, but I think the same.
I wasn't aware we were discussing ethics or utilitarianism.
Just your ethical claims specifically in regards to the video, just the Mr. Girl conversation.
Okay.
No.
So I guess, Senf, if you could start maybe with like, what were points that Dario made in the debate with Mr. Girl that you disagreed with? I think that's like a good starting point.
So yeah, I agree.
Go
ahead.
What about instead? Let's
Mm-hmm.
go through the tweet thread I was responding to, and just go by tweet, and then just talk about like what was in there, because that was mainly what I was responding to.
That was in regards to the tweet thread in regards to people saying that you were underprepared for the Mr. Girl discussion.
Yeah, like
okay.
Basically, when I responded to, do you go by Romanian? It sounds weird. Like, what do I call you?
You can call me Luca if you want. The Romanian liberal.
Sure. Okay. Sure. So, do you want to just go through like what my issue was with the tweets, or?
Can you drop the tweet thread so I can read through?
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
And I'm sure we'll get to your tweet, eventually, I guess. Was that okay? Like,
I'm okay with that.
Oh, cool. Sure. So the first tweet is Gami says, "This Dario guy is a terrible debater. No wonder he stopped streaming. Demon Mama would have done better than this." And then a clown face. So in the initial tweet, I was like, "Is this like a meme or whatever?" Because I'm pretty sure Gami is not a fan of Demon Mama. So I was kind of okay with that. And then Luca writes, "I think it was sadly telling when Mr. Girl said he was unprepared in the first 5 minutes of the debate. I really like Dario. I think he should have prepared way more for this discussion." So what did you mean, like, when you said that? That was the first one I was really confused by. Like, what do you mean by he said I was unprepared in the first 5 minutes?
Oh, there's this one bit in like the first 5 minutes of the debate where Mr. Girl like jokingly says that I feel like you came here unprepared. I don't think like Mr. Girl actually meant that, but I sort of kind of joked about it in the sense that our conclusion after watching the debate was also that you seemed a tad unprepared, in the sense that we thought your arguments weren't that great. So that's basically what I was doing there.
Sure. So first off, I think I listened back and I don't remember exactly his wording, but I'm pretty sure I made it clear, like within the first 20 minutes, where I think a lot of the controversial stuff we talked about, like I just reheard the first like 30 minutes, but we can go through the rest as well. I said multiple times in the first like 30 minutes that the debate I was coming in to have wasn't the same one as the one that Max and Steven were trying to have about the topic, right? And I think I even brought up later towards the end of the debate that I had DMs with Mr. Girl Max about like what we were actually going to talk about, right? So like even if it is the case that I was unprepared, I wasn't unprepared in the sense that I wasn't prepared to have like that this like topic. But
what did you think the conversation you were going into was?
Sure. I was planning to have like all of the notes I had down for like the conversation was specifically about the thing that I mentioned at first, like when I brought up like what I wanted to talk about, and then both Steven and Mr. Girl said, "Oh, but that's not going to be a trans debate." And
what is the topic that you guys agreed to? Like, what did they communicate to you?
Well, So initially, when I asked him because he was doing a trans panel specifically about some of these things and about like medical procedures and whatever, and I basically DM'd him and like, do you want to have the trans debate with me? And then we sort of jokingly we called it like the trans question or whatever. And then I tried to specify more about like what I was having issues with, specifically about like how he argues consent in terms of like SRS and stuff like that. Right. So that was what I was going in, but it seemed like as soon as
Perfect.
I was trying,
That is what I think you were unprepared on, right? The aspects of this regarding the morality of consent is the issue.
that's fine. I guess I assume we'll get to that. Okay, but just to be clear, right? So I'm unclear what the word unprepared in this context means, right? That's what I was asking, I guess.
Yeah,
Lucas, maybe.
so when basically when I said unprepared there, I just meant it in the sense that I felt like you were not providing good arguments, and by that I felt, from my understanding, you did actually do a lot of preparation. So in a strict sense, I wouldn't necessarily say you were unprepared, but that was what my meaning was there, right? It just felt to me like you didn't provide very good arguments. It felt like you were lacking in that debate.
Sure, sure. So yeah, so just to clarify, right? So when I could agree to the term that I was unprepared, in the sense that I wasn't prepared to have that discussion, right? I was going in trying to have a slightly different discussion, and I never felt I had like the ability to sort of, I guess, steer it in that direction. So in that sense, I would say I was unprepared. Okay.
I also feel like if you're going to do a debate like this on a topic such as like transgender issues and like trans people in societies and issues related to them, I think there is also you need to be prepared on some level to also react to like changes in the conversation or different topics that might be brought up by like the people you are debating and so on. I think that also like goes into preparing for such conversations in this space.
So, and again, like I think this is the first time I've spoken to either of you,
Yeah.
on voice at least. All right, so I don't know how familiar are you with me, like in general, like the things I've done, I guess, in the past 2 years or so. Like,
I don't think any of the claims in the thread were about you generally. They're about you in this discussion.
well, no, I'm asking.
Oh, I personally just know you from Twitter. I really enjoy your
Okay,
presence on Twitter and stuff
sure,
like that. I know
sure,
you're like a game developer who has a cooperative, I think.
sure.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, that's about it.
Sure. So the reason why I would disagree with what you just said, Luca, is because first off, right, I've had actually a few trans. I think I've had two debates on generally on like trans topic and like just like general like the arguments pro and against trans rights and stuff like that. I had that at least twice on public platforms like Modern Day Debate with like relatively big figures, like conservative figures and stuff like that. And I've also been like on many panels in the past about it, right? So it isn't like a topic I'm unfamiliar with specifically, right? And the second thing I would say is Mr. Girl has also had that, and this was just him coming out of one of those kinds of discussions. And specifically, he's had a lot of debates about like the empirics of like stuff like relating to trans issues, like the studies, stuff like that. He had that with Rose Wrist. I don't know if you're familiar with Rose Wrist.
I am.
I think Rose did a really good job at that, and I didn't want to just repeat like that conversation, right? I very specifically went into the discussion with with a very specific line of questioning and goal in mind, and I didn't want to just have like a general trans debate where I like go through like the arguments that everybody else brings up, right? That was a specific goal I had in mind, and you can disagree with that. You can say I think that's bad. That's fair, right? But I think that's sort of a different criticism.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
the claim was just about you being unprepared in this discussion over Twitter, right? That was the claim. So whether or not you were prepared some other discussion somewhere, I don't think is bearing on that claim.
Sure, we
I
can.
am even willing to say to Dario, if you felt that my characterization of you being unprepared was unfair, I will admit maybe I could have put like more thought into that tweet. I have no problem like granting you the charity that you likely, as you mentioned, I have no reason to believe you lied. You had many debates on this issue before, so in that regard, you likely are prepared. Sometimes we're not perfect at communicating. I could have maybe used a better word. That's
Sure.
understandable.
Well, it's
Though I
I'm
would
just
just replace it with your arguments seem bad. So from my
sure.
perspective, not
That's
knowing much about you, that seemed like being
that's fair.
unprepared.
Like that's fair, right? And that's like a that's more of like a like that's your kind of opinion. I guess maybe you're gonna try and bring up what kind of arguments you believe. I assume later that you think were bad or whatever. But I don't have as much issue with people saying I think the arguments Dario brought forward were bad, or like he didn't give them clear enough or whatever. I think that's a much easier claim like to defend from like both sides or whatever, and that's something we can discuss. I just specifically I take issue with people who are like, oh, Dario, this isn't really your topic, like you're not really knowledgeable on trans issues, or like you're unprepared to talk about like trans.
Well, you were unprepared in that debate. You weren't prepared with good arguments. You were prepared with really bad ones.
Sure. Okay. Is this how it's gonna be?
No, I'm just telling you it's reasonable to say you're unprepared. I don't think that's a good criticism of Benanya's tweet, right? You were in fact unprepared. You didn't have good arguments. You came to the discussion and didn't do very well, right? And a lot of your arguments were unsound. And if you had, the thing that I said in the tweet on the tweet thread was that if you had delved more into ethics, you might do better in arguments like this. And I think that's the issue here. I think if you delve more into ethics, you'll have it.
Kind of like an asshole, which is why I also responded that way.
But I don't know what way you responded. I was being an asshole.
Yeah, I felt that.
I think you probably I said I think you would probably benefit the most if you spent a bit more time delving into ethics. You bet some wild bullets. You could probably also just try to be narrow in one of the most important parts of the arguments. You could also probably try to just narrow in on the most important parts of the argument more often and not throw yourself into weird tangents that hurt you. You think that was a bit too mean?
Yeah. So specifically, what I responded to Luca was like Luca said. What am I missing? Or somebody said, what am I missing? Lucas said, a guy from Twitter debated Mr. Girl on trans issues last night and did very badly. I think other people could have done a way better job talking about this with Mr.
Well, you just said that what I said was a bit too rude, right? I'm just asking you, how was my tweet there rude?
I'm coming to it, right? Your tweet is right after that one, right? So I was asked. So I asked Luca, can any of you give me any specifics, arguments to like what made me look unprepared for that debate, and did you watch like it all, like everything of it, right? And then you respond, sent, I think you could probably benefit the most if you spend a bit more time delving into ethics, right? I would say that's not a specific thing that I said.
Well, you said that it was you claimed that there was a tone issue with it, right? Not that there was not that it wasn't specific. If you'd like, I could give you the specific insane bullet that you bet, right? Which is that like
ask you, yeah.
If you want the specific insane bullet, I think it's obvious what the insane bullet is. You said that if somebody wanted to rip their eyes out, even if it wasn't good for them, they should be allowed to do it. That was an insane bullet to bite for your position.
We can get into that. I just wanna set the tone for the conversation and sort of get the feel for it. Okay. So when I ask for a specific criticism, right, I'm asking for a specific argument. Now the bullet you're talking about here with like gouging out, I'm willing to talk about that, right? And if you had responded with that, I wouldn't have probably been as upset about it, right?
I don't care that you were upset. I'm not complaining you were upset about it, right? Okay. You criticized my tweet as being, you tone police mine. I'm not tone policing you at all. I don't really care if you're upset, right? I care just the fact that you bit a bunch of wild. Okay, I'm aware that I'm sure you do. Just a second, right? So the point is, you asked, can you give you specifics on what made you look unprepared? I gave you a specific reason why your arguments make you look unprepared. I'm not.
I think that was
that's the fact that your ethics was the issue is the specific reason why your arguments overall looked prepared, right? You biting wild bullets. That was the reason why your ethical arguments made you look unprepared.
I think, Dario, you can argue that like you were maybe expecting even more specific than that, like maybe a timestamp or a direct quote or something like that.
Or like an argument or something, right? Like saying you could spend more time delving into ethics because of a statement I made, or like a response I made to one of Mr. Girl's questions, which that was actually. And to be fair as well, like I think quite obviously a meme response, right? I literally did the yes giga chat and then silence. That was my response. It wasn't like a fully thought out, oh well, and I did give it some.
I agree it wasn't fully thought out. That's the point, right? Your positions aren't fully thought out. That's the whole claim that we're making. You were unprepared. Yes, that's the point, right?
It wasn't what I was.
If your position, I think that you can argue for trans issues, right? Without ever needing to bite the bullet if somebody should be allowed to harm themselves, right?
I don't care.
HRT isn't HRT.
Bullets.
What's wrong with so yeah, if you take your intuitions about these particular cases and you bite insane bullets on them, you look insane to the average person. With most of our intuitions,
I don't care.
Do you care about being an effective advocate? Because you don't want trans people to get hurt. You don't care about that?
No, I didn't. I'm not debating online to be an advocate, right? I don't have a platform.
Okay. Well, look, as a trans person, I don't want me and other trans people to get hurt because you wanted to have a hobby debate where you act like an idiot,
as a
right?
As a trans person myself,
You should care about your advocacy if you're a trans person. It's bad for you if you're a bad advocate.
I don't do advocacy every single second of my life.
If you're going into a debate, you should.
I don't care. I don't care what you think I should do.
It's not about what I think. It's about what's objectively you should, Dario.
If you want to go in and do advocacy against these people, you should set up a debate and do that. That's not what I'm doing.
Dario, I'm fine with setting up debates with these people, but when you set up debates, you shouldn't bomb, right? That's the point, right? You can put more effort in, and if you don't care about being in a... Okay, hold on, right? Just relax. We can take the tone down a bit, right? We can both chill. So
you've been extremely rude.
I'm taking the tone down. I'm not trying to be rude to you, right? I'll take the combos. I've tried to be direct, right? Not focus on your tone, right? I want to be able to communicate, right? When you make a...
I wasn't aware we were having a debate or like a discussion or whatever. Like I
had told you the issue I had on Twitter. I told you publicly. It was on August 25th. I told you this.
Yes, we had a tweet thread, right? And then after going back and forth on Twitter with Luca, right? Not you, with Luca.
You were adding me in the discussion as well.
Where?
When you responded to my tweet, can you point me to a bit specific thing you think is a wild bit that is a position I don't hold? I'd love for just enough. Yeah, you were adding me the entire time here, right? So
wait.
Yeah.
What do you mean by adding you?
I mean, on Twitter, when you respond to somebody, you can either remove the @ or you can include the @ right? It could just be a tech issue on you. Everyone knows this except for you, I guess, right? If you respond to somebody, it ats them on Twitter, right? When you respond to them, it ats them. You understand?
So you're saying you thought it was also about you because I responded to somebody below you directly responding to them.
Why am I in the fucking call if you didn't want to talk about the things that I've said?
Luca asked me
to. Did Luca not tell you that it was going to be more than just Luca or something?
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just.
Can you answer the question? Did Luca tell you it would be more than just Luca?
Yes.
Okay, so then you're not being blindsided by the fact that I'm here or something, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying Luca invited me on to talk about the things in the Twitter thread. Like I wasn't aware.
One of those was your post in reply to my posts.
Sure. From my perspective, right? I'm coming in to talk about the tweets and why I was responding to the tweets at all, like why I was upset about them, right? And that was my impression of the convo, right? And as soon as I joined, you were going on stream, which is fine. Like I said, it could be on stream. And the title is discussing utilitarianism.
Yeah, discussing. Would you rather me name it discussing ethics?
No, I would rather you name it talking about the tweets or
talking about the tweets are about ethics. They're about the reasons you were unprepared in the debate. You biting insane bullets, and your position on ethics is one of those reasons. That's the only one that I listed, is your ethics. Okay. So when I stream it on my stream, I'm gonna name it utilitarianism or ethics or something like that. I'm not gonna name it arguing over a tweet thread. Nobody's gonna want to watch that. My tweet, it's an accurate portrayal of the way that I tweeted in that thread, just about ethics, okay? I don't think that's unreasonable at all. You're not being blindsided. You're not the victim here. Stop portraying yourself as one.
Do you have any other arguments apart from you don't like the reason why I talked to Mr. Girl at all?
No, I had nothing that had anything to do with I don't like the reason why. I'm saying the thing you are doing is harmful. It has a negative impact. You ought not do things that have bad consequences.
I don't care. I don't think so.
You don't think that you ought not do things that have bad consequences? Okay.
I don't think what I did has a meaningfully bad impact on anything.
Okay, now you're saying now you're saying that the bad impact doesn't. Now you've moved from the bad impact doesn't matter to you don't think it has a bad impact, right? Which one of those two things do you want to talk about?
I'm not here to discuss that at all. So, Luca, if you have anything else,
you just asked me if I have a reason for this. So you are here to discuss this. You just asked me my reason. I'm giving you it.
I'm not here to talk on a meta-ethical level about me even having the conversation with Mr.
You don't. If you want to just go with particularism, you don't have to bite bullets like this, right? You don't have to bite the insane bullets. Go ahead, Banana.
Sure. So I was looking at the tweet, Dario, because I was curious about what you said. And I said like pretty specifically that I am reviewing your debate with synth posting and dev by airwaves. And I asked basically, would you be interested to have a conversation either on stream or on Discord because this would be more productive than talking over tweets,
Ah.
right? The subject was though like what specifically were your arguments in the debate and why we think they were bad, right?
Right now, but and I agree, right? And I don't mind that specifically. Like what I think is a
Mm-hmm.
bit what for lack of a better word, I would say petty is I feel
Mm-hmm.
like right now I'm discussing whether me even having a conversation is bad in some kind of
No.
Oh,
consequentialist
sure. Let me
No.
sense
clarify that. Let me
because
clarify that.
Very
I
clearly not the
wanted to
position,
compare
right, Dario?
you.
Nobody's saying that it's bad that you had the conversation itself. We're saying the way you had it was bad.
No, that's
We're saying you did bad in the conversation, not did bad by virtue of having the conversation.
you're misunderstanding. So I'm trying to clarify, right? So what I was saying, I understand those were the words I used. In the
Mm-hmm.
context, what I was trying to explain is the way that I understand, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you can
Mm-hmm.
clarify, right? Once I say this, right? It seems like the thing that you started pushing back against me right now in the call was I said I came in to have this conversation with one specific purpose, to have one specific line of questioning that I wanted to take with Max, right? And then you said, well, I think that's bad because you should be prepared to have any kind of discussion at all about trans people with this person because that ultimately has an effect on all trans
I don't know what you're pulling from. What I said that your advocacy was bad in the conversation, and you said the advocacy being bad doesn't matter. And now you're saying the advocacy was good, right? You're jumping all over the place. You're making up things that happened in the conversation that didn't.
people.
Sim,
I don't know.
Yeah.
let me get it straight, Dario. So what you're telling us is that when you went into that conversation with Mr. Girl, what you were trying to do is to test one specific argument on Mr.
Yes,
Girl and
yes,
nothing else.
yes,
Do you
exactly.
think, for example, that was clear to the audience?
I felt I was trying to get it clear in the first 20 minutes when I specifically brought it up in terms of like the two arguments I had prepared.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like when both well first I think maybe even Steven was the first one to say that, oh, that's not having a trans debate. Right. And then Max said,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yes, that's not having a trans debate. Right. And they wanted to move it away from what I actually wanted to talk about. Right.
Okay,
And
so it seems a bit like both, like even Steven and Mr. Girl both identified like we're kind of that this is a bit problematic. That you came in thinking that I am only going to debate this one hyper specific point and nothing else, right? It seems
because
like both the
yeah,
audience and your fellow like debaters were having this issue, right?
but I disagree with that. Right? I disagree. I don't think there's anything wrong, and I think the points I was trying to make were good. The points I wanted to make, I think, were good in terms of like trying to figure out why Max actually holds the positions he holds. Because it is my view that if I'm just gonna come in and do basically the same type of debate that he's already had actually 5 times, I think, with 5 different people, it's just going to be the same response that it is, and the same response that we got in the conversation as well, where he just fundamentally doesn't believe that trans people exist in the same way that I do, and presumably you do as well. So like I didn't think I would get anything out of that except like
But do
repeating
you
the same.
actually believe in the argument that you gave there that you think it would be ethical for someone to like essentially self-mutilate if they want to? Like, do you
Yeah,
actually believe in that
yeah.
argument, or is it? And do you think it's like an actual good argument for like trans issues, or just like an argument that you
Well,
were trying to give to Mr.
Well,
Girl?
it depends on what you mean for like a good argument for trans. That depends on like what you mean by good, right? So in this context, I would say I thought going in, and I guess I didn't get to explore it as well with him, right? But the point I was trying to make was that it was for me it doesn't matter like for me personally like the way that I view the issue is it doesn't matter to me whether or not there's some kind of underlying truth of whether or not somebody is trans. I think just in general everybody should have an ability to do essentially what they want with their own body given that they are able to consent to
Okay,
it and are of sound mind, right? That
yeah,
was the argument I was trying to make, so I was trying to pull him away from that fundamental disconnect between us two.
yeah. So
And
our problem basically is that even if if that is what you were trying to do, we believe that that is a very bad argument. We think it's
sure,
both bad
that
ethically
might
and also bad for trans issues.
Sure, but that's also something that we can disagree on, right? I mean, we might not have the same kind of ethics, we might not have the same kinds of principles or things.
Well,
Like we
yeah,
can just disagree.
well, no, because the whole point of generally debating such things, right, is to try and see like what's the truth of the matter, which one of us actually has like a good ethical system, like a coherent one, for example, right?
I mean, if you disagree with that point, I mean, we can talk about that a little bit if you want. But I mean,
Like, what would have you done in the debate if Mr. Girl told you like, oh, I just have a different ethical system? Would you have just given up and not have debated the ethics of it with them?
I mean, we could have talked about it a little bit, and I think the reason why it might have worked better than usually the way that those discussions go with him is that I think we do share a similar ethical system, and I think that was becoming more evident in the after discussion where we talked about like stuff like ADHD and sort of his general view of the world. I think we did share some similarities there in the way that we form arguments, which is why
Didn't share that one, did he?
one.
He didn't share that aspect of his ethical system, did he? I mean, he said pretty publicly he doesn't think you should be able to do whatever you want. If it's harming you, you shouldn't be able to harm yourself.
Yeah, but specifically what I'm saying is I think he's being inconsistent there with some other views of his, right? So that was what I was trying to portray. I was trying to portray to him the way that he inconsistently applies his ethical framework, and I think he's being inconsistent in the trans issue aspect, where for all other cases he would be acceptable of it.
Isn't he just a particularist? I mean, in fact, you know it wouldn't be the case that he'd be consistent on that in other cases because he gave you one example case and he was consistent on that with his trans argument, right? You, on the other hand, just bit like a wild bullet that you didn't have to bite, right? So it's not the case that he's inconsistent. He's just kind of
Yeah. I don't. So when you say you bit a wild bullet, you don't have to bite, right? I don't care about biting bullets. I'm gonna do it all day, right? If I think I'm being consistent, and I might be wrong, right? I might. If you ask me a certain set of questions, I might
okay.
rethink that.
The reason I'm bringing up the biting a bullet is because we're talking about the impact. So hold on. The reason that we're talking about, I don't care about it inherently either, right? The issue is when you bite a bullet like this in this context, where the implication is that your heart, the trans people are doing self-harm, right? That a person who's transitioning is self-harming. Then when you bite a bullet like that, it makes it seem like you're okay with self-harm, and that's why you're okay with trans people. Not you're okay with trans people because it is effective for them.
Okay, so did you ignore like 5 minutes after where I was specifically asked like if that was my opinion, and I said no, that wasn't my opinion. I think that's a disagreement, but I think we can move.
Dario, the issue is that when you bite bullets like this, even if it's not your opinion, right? There's an implication that's made, and there's a reason the advocacy is ineffective. I know you don't care about that, right? But this is the reason why the consequences, the impacts of the conversation are bad, because these moment-to-moment instances still have an impact. When you bite a bullet and you make yourself look insane and you make trans advocacy look insane, it's bad for the world, it's bad for us.
Okay, so this isn't what happened exactly, right? But let's say what happened was he asked me, "Do you think somebody should be able to gouge their eyes out if they're horny?" And I was like, "Yes." And then 10 seconds passed, and then I said, "No, obviously I don't believe that." Do you think that would have been bad still?
That isn't what happened.
No, I'm asking.
You're right. What happened was he asked you should somebody be able to gouge their eyes? It would still be bad. Yeah, you look inconsistent, right? But if he was to gouge his eyes out, or say if somebody were to gouge their eyes out and because they were horny, do you think it'd be good that they did it? And you said yes, and you didn't then correct it afterwards, right? You didn't say no, I don't actually believe that, which is a lot closer to what happened. That would be pretty bad. You agree your case didn't happen, right? This case did. This is way, way worse.
Sure. So what I'm saying is, if you think it's bad, if I first say yes and then afterwards say no, obviously not, then you just disagree with, like, I don't know, me trying to make a humorous point. Like, I don't think we can continue from there.
I don't think it didn't come off as it didn't come off as humor, right? You were making a humorous point. You were biting a bullet, right? And you said giga chat afterwards. Or you bit a bullet and said giga chat afterwards. The funny part is that you say giga chat, not that you bit the bullet. You were biting the bullet either way. You think it's consistent with your principles?
I actually didn't say giga chat. I just said yes.
Okay, you said yes giga chat.
Yes, I did. I did say that. I said I was
like
giga chat, but I didn't say giga chat in the car.
I didn't hear you say it either. But the way you quoted it back, I just trusted you on it, right? Are you saying that I shouldn't have?
I don't know, bro.
Okay.
I don't know
if you're
okay, so I'm curious about this, Dario. So one of our clients seems like when you made like those statements and that made you look bad, like I was basically reviewing your debate with a lot of other trans people. There was Gami, there was Synth, there was Phenomics, like a bunch of trans people were watching this, and they felt like rather insulted that like someone would go on a debate on a pretty big platform, Destiny's channel, with Mr. Girl and make such an argument. And I'm curious, at least, would you be willing to engage in some sort of discussion about that ethical argument? Maybe we can change your mind just by asking questions to you and seeing if you're consistent on that.
Sure, but I'm worried about the framing, and I can feel that I'm becoming increasingly defensive because I feel like this is not an environment where I feel like I can be honest and like tell about like my views on things and explore them. Right? I feel like this is a combative environment where it seems like I've been invited to be dunked on. Right? That's what
I'm
it
not trying
feels.
to dunk on you. I'm trying to explain to you why you're
I'm
wrong.
telling you. I'm telling you. That's the feeling
Hmm.
that I get right now. Right? So that's
So Uh, so here's the thing. I actually do agree that to a degree, like synth is a bit more combative.
I'd agree, yeah.
As you probably have noticed, synth is very combative. I'm not as combative, right? I do actually want to like
great.
see how you actually think, and also see if we can actually improve, like change your mind in a positive way, or maybe you can change our minds in a positive way. You know. So that's why I actually mentioned that I think I would do a good role as a moderator because I've moderated debates with Sin before or just discussions, and I found that I am able to like point out, okay, let's chill out here and let's actually try and understand each other and like see how
And
we can move forward in a
to
productive
be
manner.
and to be fair, like I've never seen or talked to Sint or you, so I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea what it was gonna be like when I entered, right? I had no idea about you two, and sort of the dynamics going on or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
it might just have had a bad first impression. That's also possible, I guess.
So I guess let's try and do this. Would you be willing to like have a bit of an ethical conversation about that argument that you should be willing to do like
Sure,
anything to yourself if you're like I don't know, if you
sure,
truly desire it?
sure. So my actual argument is that I think and I guess I'm trying to be as consistent as I can in that regard, right? I think you should pretty much be able to do whatever you want with your own body, right? In terms of like surgeries, in terms of like pretty much whatever, extending up to and also encompassing stuff like euthanasia, right? I think you should be able to do euthanasia or like kill yourself if that's if we can conclude as a society. I mean, depending on the severity of the action, there should be some kinds of checks and balances, obviously, in terms of like figuring out if the person is of sound mind, if they're just like having a depressive episode or something like a manic episode, something like that, right? There should be some checks there. But like, given that it is within our control, it is possible for us to sort of confirm that they are of sound mind and they have the ability to consent. They should pretty much be able to do whatever they want with their body, and I hold that, right. And I would extend that to trans people as well. Obviously, does that mean that I believe that getting SRS or like hormones or whatever, that it's cosmetic? No, obviously not. It's not comparable at all. And I also said that in the debate as well, like 5 minutes after when I was asked, do you think that's like comparable in that aspect? And I said no. And I thought I was being pretty clear, but maybe I wasn't, I guess.
Do you think that when it comes to the argument of people should be able to do what they want so long as they're of sound mind, do you think if a person is overall on net doing something that harms them, not something that's good for them, but something that harms them, do you think they'd be of sound mind? Do you think it's evidence that points in favor of them being of sound mind or against it?
Um, well, I guess that would depend on what you mean by like harm. Like, so for example, like I think we have a hard time deciding like what is harmful and what is not for individuals, like when it comes to these things, right? So like we can say, so like Max would say, right? If you're getting
Could I
um
define what I mean for it? I'll clarify.
sure.
Sure. When I say harm, I mean on net they'll have less of their preferences met, right? So they what I'm talking about when I say harm is like dispreferable things,
Sure.
and
How do you decide what their preferences are?
I don't have to. They decide what their preferences are, and then on net we can say somebody's doing something that they prefer now,
Sure, if
but
they
long term they would rather not have it, right? Rather long term they'd rather not do that.
Sure, I'll grant it for now, but I'm unsure if there's gonna be. So I will grant it in a sense of like if we look back on, I guess, what they did and it led
Mm-hmm.
to something wrong. Obviously, we can say, I mean, overall, I guess it had a it was a bad action or whatever. But I don't think we can necessarily say that like before the bad thing happens, right? So for example, with people who detransition, right? So like maybe that was the where you were going, right? So like maybe somebody would say, oh, transitioning initially was bad for them because they ended up wanting to detransition, right? But I don't believe you can make that argument like that. Like you kind of have to take it one step at a time. I mean, within reason, I think.
Yeah, I agree. You have to take it one step at a time. But I think we can make predictions based on the data about whether or not this thing is effective for trans people or not effective. And I think that's where the argument lies. If you can't make the argument that this is good for trans people, right? And instead, Mr. Girl's making the argument it's bad for trans people, and your responses are just biting the bullet. I don't really care if it's bad for trans people. They should be able to do what they want with their own body. This is, I think, a fundamentally flawed argument because of these reasons, right?
So wait. Okay. So we might have a disagreement on what Max's argument actually is, right? So to your understanding, can you clarify on what you mean by he believes it's bad for, like, why does he believe it's bad for trans people? I guess.
Sure. I think that what I'm trying to focus on here are your arguments, not Max's. I'm trying to just fixate on the arguments you made, because I haven't made any claims about how, like, if Max is doing something positive. I think he's doing something negative for the world by his advocacy, right? I'm just talking about the way you've done it. I think is also negative, right? I think it plays into the...
Sure.
So I'm just making claims about your position.
Sure, but specifically the reason why I was going in and making these arguments is because I think it would resonate with him and the way that he understands these things. Like, that was the point of the conversation.
Maybe there's some chance it resonates with him, but it doesn't resonate with the average person, right? And the people watching those conversations, it's not going to resonate with them either.
And that's fine, right? That was something I was willing to accept, right? Going in, like, and if you watch, I guess you probably don't watch my content or anything I've done, right? But
no, this is all I've seen of you, and it did. That's the impression I got.
Sure. And I've previously, so this is something I've switched to as like a debate style, because I didn't always debate like this, I guess. But I've previously had a very big success doing this on a modern day debate show, talking about like immigration with somebody who's like a super anti-immigration person, by specifically addressing the entirety of the conversation about them specifically and their feelings on the subject, and like just like delving into one thing and not arguing for immigration in general. So this is something I've done before, to, I would say, to success, or like to moderate success, I guess.
I think
But that
I think in that context, I think so I think in that context, there's a reason that's successful, and there's a reason it's not successful in this context, and that's because in that context, that person, the way that they're thinking, the way that they feel about it, is representative of the people that disagree with you. It's not just them that you're really arguing with. The audience that agrees with them thinks like they do. In the case of Mr. Girl, the audience watching him is not going to think in these terms of like people should be able to do whatever they want with their body. And I don't think deep down inside you think that either, right?
I'm not so sure about that. I think there are many people who are like conservative / libertarian leaning who watch him. I would assume, I'm not, I guess I'm not sure. Probably a lot of different people watch him.
I don't think a lot of conservative leaning people watch him, right? Maybe some people who are like libertarian leaning, though. Conservatives, certainly not. Mr. Girl, no. The Cuties review would push a lot of them away.
Sure. Yeah, maybe libertarian leaning, sure. But like the argument, regardless, I think the argument would work for like libertarian leaning people, as I do consider myself also libertarian leaning.
You consider yourself like libertarian on in broadly? Like, are you in like an NAP, or are you just like you're just libertarian leaning and that you care, you're like a left libertarian or something along those lines?
Yeah.
Okay, so you agree that if you're a left libertarian, then you understand that people shouldn't be able to do whatever they want with their own body, right? There are limitations. That people shouldn't be able to do something. They shouldn't be able to volunteer into a voluntary contract if it's something that's bad for them, right? Or something that's bad for the world.
I mean, it would depend on what it is, right? So I feel like you're sort of begging the question when you say it's bad for them and bad for the world, right? And
no, I'm not question begging, right? I'm saying, when I say bad, I'm saying it's harm. We can say like net harmful, right? If we talk about preferences minus dispreferences, it's a net dispreferences.
Sure, I guess, so we're getting back to like, how do we know what's harmful for them, right? And you would say, I guess we can look at what similar people have done.
Well, that's an epistemic question. Right. How do we know things is like we don't know anything, but we can have pretty good evidence of stuff, right?
Sure, but I would say in terms of like people maximizing their preferences, I guess this is something I believe currently, but I guess maybe you can change my mind. I think in terms of like people maximizing their preferences, I think the only real way for them to do that is by just kind of listening to what they're saying, right? And like what they think would maximize their preferences in the given moment. And sure, I mean, there's like some caveats in terms of like mental illness or whatever, or like they might be impaired in the moment or whatever. But like generally, I mean, that's the best way, I would say.
Well, I think that's a good general heuristic, but it's not just those caveats of people who are mentally ill, but there's also people in general. People in general are going to make irrational decisions sometimes. They might be good in the short term, but long in the bad term for them, right? So they might not actually end up giving a.
Sure, but like how
Mhm.
I guess maybe I'm not I guess maybe I'm not ready to say that it's like necessarily bad in the long term for them, or like maybe, I mean, there might be like some cases, right? Like we can probably make a hypothetical for where I would probably agree with you, right? So like for example, let's say, I don't know, they might be thirsty and there's like a vial of poison, and on the
Mhm.
vial it says poison, but they're like, it's probably not going to be bad, and then they drink the poison, and then in like 2 weeks or whatever they die because they drank an obvious poison, right? Maybe like that. But I think in general, how we operate in society, I don't think it's that clear cut, right? I think it's like, yeah, I think it's way more difficult.
So I agree, it's not that clear cut, right? It's really complicated. There are a lot of factors we have to weigh, right? But that's what we're doing. We take the totality of the evidence, right, and then we weigh the evidence that way. We don't just take one individual portion of the evidence.
If you maybe if you do more like practical examples, maybe
Sure.
have an easier time respond instead of like, because I feel like in general I have a hard time making general prescriptions in that regard. Like I'd rather
Mhm.
like if you, yeah.
We can walk through more particular cases about the issues, right? So if we take, you took an example where a person doesn't know, right, that the vial's going to harm them, but in the real world, it's more complex than that, right?
Even if they do, fine.
Okay, so
Yeah, whatever.
yeah, maybe they do, and they're just so thirsty, they're just not thinking straight, right? So I think that's one example, right? And you said it's not usually that clear cut in the real world, right? But any hypothetical, any particular case won't be that clear cut in the real world, which is why I tried to give you the principles themselves, not the particular cases. But here's another particular case, right? So let's imagine we have a person, and the action that they're about to do is maybe they're a person who's they're not in any way like psychologically ill, right? They're of a sound mind, right? But they're going through a really rough spot in their life, and because of that, they're thinking there's nothing they can do about it. Their life is genuinely bad. This person is currently having a rough life. Their life could get better, but they've given up hope, right? And this person thinks to themselves, okay, I know I'm of sound mind, right? I know I'm capable of consent. I'm gonna go ahead and kill myself. This is what this person says to themselves. Do you think in this instance we should let that person do that, or should we stop them?
So just to clarify, when you're saying they want to kill themselves, do you mean like they just want to do it and they just take a knife and slice at their throat, or like do you think are they going through like a doctor or whatever? Like is it euthanasia? Like
No, it's not euthanasia. We're just a person in their home. They've got a gun, right? And they're a normal American citizen. We have a huge suicide epidemic, so I feel like this is a real enough world case.
okay, so I guess maybe I'm not clear about like how we would stop them, right? Or like what we could like, because like the argument that I made was like I'm the argument that I'm making is I'm saying, right, if they want to do something which I consider rather extreme, like killing yourself, probably the most extreme thing I can think about, right? So there would be deep like um, deep like medical intervention going in before that, right? To talk to the person over like a huge time span, maybe like a year or whatever, maybe two
Mm-hmm.
years, not huge, whatever, but like years, and then making sure that like this is actually like what they want, and like clearing that they are still of sound mind for like maybe a year, 2 years of whatever time. And then after that, then through the state, you could be like, oh yeah, you can do like a euthanasia or whatever. Like that's what I'm talking about. Not like
No,
most.
that's what you're talking about with euthanasia, right? I'm talking about here's an example of a particular case, because you wanted one, of a person who's of sound mind. They're able to consent, right? And they're about to do a thing that's harmful to themselves. Those three qualities. They're about to do something that's very harmful to themselves because of the fact that their life could very well get better, and it's only bad momentarily. But they're a reasonable, sound-minded person. They are genuinely going through a rough spot in their life, right? They're genuinely having a hard time. Do you think this person, if I was in the room with this person is about to pick up a gun and shoot themselves, should I physically force them to stop? Should I be able to do that?
Because
Yeah,
yeah, because it wouldn't fit within the criteria I gave, right? So like
it does. The criteria you gave were of not for euthanasia, but the criteria you gave for what actions people should be able to do.
sure, I'm I'm trying to. The reason why I use euthanasia is because I'm trying to involve like a third party there to like help make the decision. Right now, I want to go through like the medical field in terms of to determine whether or not they have sound mind. Like
Hmm.
if I'm in the room with them, right? I don't know whether I might have an idea about whether or not they're of sound mind, like all these things, right? I would probably assume they weren't if they were just randomly out of nowhere trying to kill themselves, right? So like I'd probably assume, oh yeah, this person isn't of sound mind. I would tackle them and try and stop them. I would assume something else is going on, right? That's not the
If
argument
you,
I'm making.
even if you knew in this moment that this person was of sound mind, right? The example I gave you, if you knew you were in that hypothetical, do you think you should stop that person from force? You know they're of sound mind, they're capable of consent, right? And they're about to do a thing that's going to harm themselves.
If I knew, so if I knew that
Hmm.
this is something that maybe they've confined in me, right? And like I'm some magical like god doctor or whatever, and I know for fact that they are of sound mind, they have the ability that they've talked about this for a year, and then they just do it. Then no, yeah, then you shouldn't stop them, right? Then
You
that
shouldn't.
meets my criteria.
Okay, that does fulfill your criteria, right? The hypothetical fulfills it so long as you know that's the hypothetical you're in, right? So,
If I have
mhm.
God knowledge to be able to determine that, like basically, if I can act as the doctor in that sense,
Okay. Do you think if you were in that moment, right? If you were trying to reason to yourself, if you weren't, instead of being the person who can stop them, you were the person themselves. You're going through a rough spot in your life. You know it could get better, right? You know that right now you're having a really rough time and you want to end it all. But maybe it's better for you long term, right? Maybe you understand all these things, but it's just so rough for you currently. You have to end. You feel like you've got to end it immediately, right? You're of sound mind, but you're just not acting rationally, right? So you're not mentally ill. You're just not acting rationally because you're under pressure.
so
Do you think you should stop yourself from killing yourself?
sure. So I'm not. I guess I'm not clear about what you're asking because I feel like I've already answered this. So maybe there's not something
No,
something
now I'm saying, I'll
yeah,
explain.
yeah,
I'll just clarify. I understand the issue, right? If you think it's the earlier question, what I'm saying now is you're not in the room with that person. You are that person.
yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that part. I understand that part, right? So the issue that I'm having is that, right? So specifically, the criteria I'm making is that, and the reason why I make that criteria is that I don't want this to be like a spur of the moment decision, right? Like I don't want people to go for like, let's say they've lived for let's say 30 years, and then suddenly, um, I don't know, maybe this is a bad example, whatever. Sure, we'll do this example, right? I don't want them to go, like, go 30 years, nobody knows that they're having any issues or whatever. Then suddenly one day they come to the doctor and they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to chop my arm off." Like that's what I really want. I don't want that to be the case, right? So I'm trying to avoid that by adding like a time frame, and the time frame is relative to the action being performed, right? So when you say, "Oh, somebody comes in," and they're like, or
The
like
time frame is instrumental, though, right? The time frame is not the value itself. You just care about making sure they're of sound mind and capable of consent, right? And they're able to do things that harm themselves.
time frame. No, and have a time frame.
And you need the time frame.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I don't want you to have like a spur of the moment decision, right? Because you can
Okay.
like,
What's the time frame
that would depend on like the action, right? So like maybe if it's
for
like
killing yourself?
oh, that's probably years, like maybe
Years.
like 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say this person's going through a 2 or 3 year period that's going to be especially bad in their life, right? But overall, their life's still going to be net positive. The exact same example.
That's gonna be fine. Yeah, I'll agree
They.
to that. Yeah.
Okay. You think
If it meets the criteria, then yes, I will agree.
so? For that earlier example, with the person who's they're just going through a rough patch and not a rough 2 or 3 years, you said earlier that you would think it was wrong to stop them so long as you knew, right? That they were of sound mind and capable of consent, right?
Well, they should.
But with
They
it,
should be.
but they didn't fit the timeline issue, right? So do you think in this case it's not actually the case that you should stop that you shouldn't stop them?
Well, if you weren't aware, like so again, we're taking this out of a clinical setting, and I'm just a friend. I come to visit them. Like I haven't seen them in like
We're saying you are aware in the hypothetical. You are aware they're of sound mind, right? It hasn't been a year of them being like this. It's just they're of sound mind. They're capable of consent.
if the time frame hasn't been filled,
Mm-hmm.
I would disagree with it. If the time frame has been filled, we can. I mean, you can say it's arbitrary time frame or whatever. I mean, we can discuss that.
No,
But
I'm okay with you. I'm not going to hit you with the continuum fallacy and like force you to like pick a specific line. It's probably arbitrary somewhere, right? But maybe there's some reason for it. It doesn't really matter where the line is. But the issue is there is a line.
yeah, there's a line, right? And if it passes the line, I'm okay with it, right? So you can say, oh, if you're there in the room, and they've had like this feeling for like 2 or 3 years, and they do it, and then you shouldn't stop them. and same way, if that was you, right? Also, I would agree, right? If it fills the criteria with the timeline and that they are of sound mind and that they have the ability to consent, then yes, I would also agree with that.
You think you in that moment, if you were the person sitting in that chair, right, with the gun in your mouth, you don't think you should try to reason yourself out of it?
No, not if I've made that decision.
Okay, just to be super clear, if you're in the chair with the gun in your mouth, it's been a year, you feel like you really want to end it all. And even though it's the case that you'd prefer it more if you didn't, right? Your life will be better off if you don't.
I wouldn't know that I would prefer it.
Long term, we're saying in the hypothetical, you don't know anything in the real world, right? It's a hypothetical, right?
Yeah, but how would I know the future?
You don't know anything in the real world, right? It's a hypothetical.
Yeah, but I feel like the hypothetical is impossible.
No,
like
any hypothetical where you know something is impossible. Yeah, I agree. That's the point of hypotheticals. So we can control out for those factors and we can pretend that we know things.
Okay, so are you saying if I had like a time machine and I went into the future and knew that my life would be amazing if I just wouldn't kill myself in this moment in like a week? And is that what you're saying? Right. So like, I mean, I'm sure we can put enough caveats there where I would say, yeah, probably you should wait one more day to kill yourself to figure out, hey, if your life became amazing.
Maybe you're about to get a raise, right, in a month or something. You're about to get a really good raise and your life's really bad because you're not able to afford the bills that you have to pay, right?
Sure.
Maybe that's what it is. But it's been the time frame, right? You're of sound mind. The time frame is fit, the sound mind is fit, all of the heuristics that you've set down are fit, right? Every single one. Do you think you should stop yourself in that moment, or should you let yourself kill yourself?
I think you should. I think you should, if that's what you wanted to do, right? And all of the criteria is met. I think you should go through with it, right? I think that is something you have the right and the ability, and that's something you should do as a human being. You should decide when your life ends. Right?
Rights or restrictions. No, wait, rights or restrictions that we place on institutions of government to stop them from doing things that are bad. It's not the case that we have to like imagine some ephemeral right that you can't think yourself through. You can't violate your own rights, right? That makes no sense.
It was just a figure of speech. So what I'm saying is, I think that is, if that is what you want to do and the criteria is met, then yeah, that is, you should do that in that moment. I guess I wouldn't personally understand it, right? But I think that it's better if it's like that. I don't have the ability to do that.
Would you agree this person's not acting rationally? They're of sound mind, but they're not acting rationally in the moment?
I don't know. I'm not sure about like when you use the word rational. I guess.
I just mean, do you think they have good reasons for it? What they're doing? No. Like, is it without contradiction? Is it not logically flawed? Is it like well reasoned based on evidence?
Yeah.
So, what do you think the goal fundamentally that a person has is?
I think I don't know if I like. What do you mean goal?
I mean, if you could describe,
live their
right?
Life, or
well, I think that clearly some people don't have that goal, right? I'm saying fundamentally, right, is there a goal that every single human being seems to have, right? Some way we could describe the goals of all human beings, even though they're not going to be the specific goals of each one. Some way we could cast a wide net and catch all of them.
Are you looking for like maximize their preferences? Is that what you want to say?
That works too, right? Maximize their preferences is fine. Is that the one you want to go with?
Sure.
Okay. Some people will say other answers. Some people will say it's not to maximize their preferences, right? Because they don't really care about the preference after their death. Maybe to maximize preferable experience or something like that. If that's what you want to go with, that works, right? Do you think this person is in fact actually maximizing their preferences?
Yeah, I think for like with the like for the time being, yeah. I think
maybe
unless I think maybe the argument you're trying to make is that if we look at their life in totality combined with the future, then that's probably not the case. But I don't think we can make that decision. Like I think we have to cut it somewhere.
Well, we certainly could make that decision. We don't have to cut it off somewhere, right? We could imagine their entire life in totality all the way up until death. We could cut it off there if you want.
Sure, I understand we can do that, right? Like when we're talking about like in these hypothetical senses, right? But like I think the way that it works right now in the world, and the way that I envision it's probably going to work for quite a long time. I think that's how it has to be in order for it to be like the best for everyone, or like that's the system that is the closest to what I think is good, right? Like you can, like it's the same argument as saying like, oh, is it better to have like a libertarian society where everybody can do whatever they want and trying to maximize their own preferences, or is it better to have like a all-knowing dictator god which to every single person dictates what their preferences are going to
It's
be?
not what I'm asking at all.
No,
We're
I'm trying to make a comparison. Right? I'm like asking, would it technically be better to have like an all-knowing God dictator, which specifically like maximizes the preferences for each person because they know what they're gonna like? I mean, yeah, maybe in like in theory, but that's not gonna be like a system that I'm gonna
I
advocate
know that
for.
none of these hypotheticals are intended to be the most realistic hypothetical in the world,
I
right? The
understand.
whole point is to control out for all those things, right? So
I understand.
the
Okay, so,
the
so
point being,
I'm trying to
do you just a second. The point being, right? If we talk about this person in this situation, right? The world, do you think would be made better off by them staying in it?
sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you think this person, the one we're talking about earlier, where it's you in the chair, right? Do you think the world is made better off by that person staying in the world?
I don't know.
Well, you know that. Let's just say that we know the person for some reason. We're just controlling this out. We know the person is overall their life's going to be a net positive if they don't do this, even including all the bad instances in the past, right?
I think I wouldn't calculate like their worth to the world in the same way. I think they before they are worth to the
Well,
world,
just
they have a
let's just imagine they're worse to themselves. Let's imagine they're the only person in the world. Do you think the world? Do you think they are better off? They are better off by staying alive.
yeah because well no I would say because they are the only ones who ultimately know like what's best for themselves. I would say.
So they might be the only ones who know it, right? But sometimes you just don't really know what's best for you, right? Sometimes you're just making bad decisions.
Sure, but I think that's just part of life, right? And I would
Yeah, that's the point. It's part of life.
yes, technically yes. I would say technically. I mean, if they say right, if I go outside and I'm like, oh, I really want to have a burger, uh, and I ask somebody, where's the burger place, and they're like, oh, if you go south, you're gonna find burger places, and then I go north, and I don't find a burger place. I'm doing something objectively bad in terms of like getting to my stated preference, right? But maybe I just really wanted to walk north that
Yeah,
day.
maybe your actual preference was different from your stated one. I agree, but we're not talking about a difference between stated and actual preferences. We're talking about actual preferences. Their actual preferences are not met by the action they're doing.
Sure, but I don't feel like I would grant that maybe maybe that's something that we can theoretically discuss, but I think practically or like in like basically I don't have an issue with hypotheticals, right? Like I can answer the question hypothetically, and I can grant
Yeah.
you hypothetically in the hypothetical, then sure. But I think the hypothetical is so far removed from like any kind of world that I'm talking about that like it's just gonna be vapid, right?
Well,
And I'm gonna be able to.
yeah,
It's
that's
unconvincing. It's gonna be unconvincing.
it's not the point isn't to convince you that the hypothetical is real, right? The point is to show you that in this case, right, if we know that this is the case, we'd want to stop this. So if we had evidence to believe it was the case and very little contrary evidence, we'd still act on that evidence, right? The reason that you care about their stated preferences is because they're representative of their actual preferences. You don't care about the statement itself, right? You don't care about it.
Line. Like all of my criteria are there to the best of our ability determine what their preferences actually are by continuously asking them over a time frame, making sure they're of sound mind, making sure they're not influenced, right? That is everything I'm going up towards, right? And you're basically telling me, well, if we take all of the steps that I'm advocating for to determine their preferences, and we then find out that actually all of the steps were wrong and they had another preference actually, then sure we would have been wrong, uh, but I don't think you can practically do it in any
So
other way.
that's all I'm saying here is we only care about it because it's evidence, right? So if we have contrary evidence other than their stated preferences, that can outweigh the stated preferences. Sometimes that can be the case. Sometimes a person can say they want something and we can know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's why
so if we knew that
criteria exists.
so if we knew that in most cases of suicide, like the ones the one we talked about, people were of sound mind, right? But they didn't actually get there, they didn't fulfill their preferences, we'd want to stop them.
Yeah, yeah. If they are like if they didn't fulfill, So like if it goes outside of the criteria, then yes, I guess.
No, let's imagine they do. Let's imagine that we do have evidence, right? That we do have evidence that that 1 year criteria, people are still usually making a bad decision.
I feel like I've already. Maybe I'm just nervous. I feel like I've already answered this.
You haven't.
I'm not sure if you're just restating or.
You haven't answered this, right? I'm saying, let's imagine they fulfill the criteria, including the 1 year one that you just included, right? However, we know that for some other reason, we have really good evidence, right? That it's actually the case that most of the people doing this aren't maximizing their preferences. And if stopped, that would maximize their preference. We would say that we should do that anyways, right? We should stop them.
Sure, but I wouldn't say that evidence from most of the people is going to override the evidence we have about their own stated preferences over a long enough time.
So that's fine. You can say this, right? It's just not the. It's just all we're saying is, in principle, what matters most is what maximizes the preferences. What maximizes everyone's preferences on aggregate, right?
Well, no, I would say in principle, what matters most to that person is them maximizing their own preferences, right? So like.
That's not what I asked. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying what matters to a person, right? I'm saying what truly matters the most, right? Is what maximizes everyone's preferences on aggregate, right? What matters to this person the most is going to seem from their perspective to maximize their own preferences.
Like how we go about that is, I guess, the core question. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So then that's all utilitarianism states, right? And that's the issue with the claims you were making. That's a sound ethical position now, right? That our goal is to maximize everyone's preferences on aggregate. Saying something like, if a person is horny, they should be able to rip their eyes out because it makes them horny. Just because, yeah.
Joke.
Well, you keep saying this, right? But the joke was that the joke wasn't like that you weren't gonna bite that bullet. The joke is that you're biting the bullet and it's crazy, right? That was the joke. That was why it fun. That was why it was funny in context.
No.
That's how. Maybe that's not what you intended to do, right? But that's how it really looked to everyone else.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it looks to everybody else, because I'm obviously to other people. You can laugh. I mean, maybe that's how it looked to you and like your 4 viewers right now, right? But like,
So true. I'm so owned because my viewer count is low.
no, I'm just saying. You're saying that's how it looked to everyone, right? And I'm saying, I mean,
More. It wasn't 4 people watching you bomb the Mr. Girl debate, right? It was a lot more than that.
no, I agree, right? So what I'm saying, I'm just saying you made a claim about it looking like that to everybody,
And then you made a tangential jab about like audience size. Like I don't know what's your audience size. I don't watch your stream. I've never heard of you, right? So this is just irrelevant. Talk about the point. Stop making personal jabs.
Sure. Do you want to substantiate the claim that that's how it looked to everybody? Can you have
sure. When I make the claim that's how it looked to everyone else, I'm not saying I've polled every single person. I'm saying it's pretty obvious that came off that way to a lot of people, including if we want to go through Mr. Girl's comment section and see the way you came off, right? I don't think you came off very well. Even you think you didn't do well in the debate, right? You've admitted to yourself online, right here live, that you didn't do very well.
Yeah, but for different reasons, right?
Okay.
Because I made a joke that didn't land.
You said that biting bullets is fine. Now you're saying it's a joke. You're just contradicting your earlier claim, right? And we both know it wasn't just like a haha funny joke, right? We know you.
I was trying to explain. Like, this is why I don't want to. This is why I feel like you're being unnecessarily hostile, right? Because
no, I was talking to you about principles, and you got hostile by making personal jabs instead, right? You can't play the victim. Everyone saw you make the personal jab. All one of the 4 viewers watching did, right?
The entire premise for this conversation is you making personal attacks against me. Okay.
What's the personal attack that you think was like that you think was a low blow, that you think wasn't necessary, that you did poorly in a debate?
No, coming in from literally nowhere, right? Like in the middle of a Twitter thread that wasn't even about you, it was me responding to somebody else and saying, "Oh, maybe you should have been more like read up on ethics or whatever."
You think that's a low blow personal attack, is saying you should read more about ethics?
Yeah, like how do you imagine somebody's going to respond if that's the first message?
A normal person doesn't respond to this by thinking that the other person is being hostile to them. Nothing about my post was hostile.
I think that's how a normal person would respond, to be fair. But I mean,
no, it certainly isn't. No normal person would hear you should read a little. You could benefit if you spent a bit more time delving into ethics because you bit some wild bullets, and think that person is being hostile to them. You have a victim complex. You're being irrational here. Okay, so can we talk about the subject, or do you want to make more personal attacks?
I was trying.
Let's talk about the subject. No, you weren't trying to. You were trying to make personal jabs.
No, I was trying to explain. Like you brought up the gouging your eyes out, right? Biting the bullet, and I was trying to explain what the joke was to you, right? The joke wasn't that I made a completely wild statement that I don't disagree with, right? That wasn't the joke of it, right? The joke was in the delivery and how I said it. And
That's what I just said.
okay, that didn't sound like the way that you said it.
That was verbatim what I said. You almost quoted me back what I said. The joke, yeah, I said the joke was not that you're saying something you don't agree with. You just agreed with that, right? The joke was that the joke was the delivery, right? You just completely, you almost like verbatim quoted back to what I said, and now you're saying no again. You're just going back and forth.
Okay. Okay. I'll try one more time.
Try. Go ahead.
Sure. So I didn't come in saying, "Oh yeah, I think it's the same as like gouging my eyes out," right? So I was asked a question, right? And obviously, jokey, like out of left field, like dumbly phrased question. Well, not stupidly phrased, but like obviously like what's it like? An over the top question, right? Do you think you should gouge your eyes out if you're being horny? Right? And like obviously, like I don't believe that. I don't believe you should be able to gouge your eyes out if you're just being horny. Right? Like, do I believe that there's a hypothetical scenario where you should be able to gouge your eyes out if that's your preference, right? And your preference might be being horny. Do I believe that you have the ability to consent to that and like perform that procedure or like get that procedure performed on you? I do agree with that, right? But that isn't the way that it was phrased. The way that it was phrased was specifically to make a joke or whatever, and I was trying to join in on the joke, right?
Then why did you mention that it? Okay, so if it is the case that you would bite the bullet on the hypothetical, I don't know why you're mentioning to me that it's a joke. I'm not bringing it up because it wasn't funny, right? It wasn't, but I'm just bringing it up because of the fact that the joke you made was about a bullet you were willing to bite. You just said you're willing to bite it. Yeah, that's the point. I'm only bringing it up because it's a bullet, not to like
maybe
not because you're bad at comedy, right? That's not the point. Is not that your joke wasn't funny. The point is just your joke was your joke was biting a bullet that you do in fact bite. Okay.
Dario, what you are trying to say, if I understand correctly, is that the reason you think that wasn't necessarily biting the bullet is because you would only bite that bullet if you added like more stuff to it. Is
yeah,
that what you're trying
exactly,
to say?
exactly, right? That's the jokey part of it, right? I'm biting a bullet I don't believe in, but I actually do believe in if I'm rephrasing that and steel manning what Max was saying, right, in my own framework, then yeah, I don't have a problem
Yeah,
biting that
but
bullet.
the
But
problem.
I'm obviously I'm not saying, yeah, you go down to the doctor and be like, "Hey, doctor, I'm fucking horny. Do you want to gouge my eyes out?" And the doctor says, "Oh yeah, let's do it right now." That's not what I
The
believe,
problem
obviously.
here, I think, is that even given like what you call like still manning that position, it's still like incredibly similar to the original. Like the differences are quite little, I would say.
Sure.
Or
And if you disagree with that, listen, if you disagree with that position, that's fine. Right? Like that's a different that's a different thing. And I feel like we have been arguing that position, I guess, a little bit. I don't know if we reached like the end point of that discussion or whatever. I haven't been, I guess, convinced by the arguments you've been bringing forth.
So those are all heuristics, right? All of those things that you think are the qualifications for what allows somebody to do something are just heuristics. It's not a true principle. If it was the case that their preferences would actually be maximized by doing something else, that's what we ought to do, right?
I'm well, basically, I guess what I'm trying to get at is how we should act as a society against somebody who has something that they want to perform on themselves, right? So, like, if you're asking me, like, how should people in general act, like, in according to themselves? I mean, yeah, I would say you should act according
So
to
I
their
think
preference.
what Cindy's trying to tell you or point out is the fact that you don't actually believe in this in consent in this case as the principle, right? Consent isn't what you're fundamentally seem to be concerned with. What you're concerned with is human well-being, and you think that granting consent to a very large extent, societally,
Yeah,
that like makes the world better, right? That increases
yeah,
human well-being. That's
yeah,
what you actually think. But
yeah.
for example, if Sim could give you like some, or if we could give you like some good arguments for why it seems like this isn't a good heuristic, that maybe it's not good to grant this insane amount of consentability to people, that maybe that leads to bad things in society. Would that change your mind?
I mean, Well, it depends, right? So when I'm arguing for something, or like when I try to envision the world, right? I'm mixing in some sort of degree of practicality, right? And you can say, well, that degree of practicality, I have a different degree of practicality, or whatever. I think we can do that a different way. That's fine, right? There are many different ways that I believe we can probably reach like a utopian society, right? So like the arguments that Synth is making, like I understand those arguments, right? And in terms of, I understand where you're getting at, but ultimately, I think those fail in the, like, when we transfer them from the hypothetical to the practical sense, right? And that's why I wouldn't hold those
Why do they?
arguments.
Why do these positions fail when you transfer them from the hypothetical to the practical sense? Why do my positions fail?
Because I think they rely on us being able to, basically, they rely on one of two things. Either one, we rely on somebody being able to know that in the future their preferences are gonna
No,
be
they don't.
different from. Okay,
I've said several times it's okay to use evidence. We can abduct from evidence and we can use that instead.
sure. Can I finish? So I said 2 points. The other point was what you just
Well, I
mentioned.
wanted to go point by point, right? Your first point was wrong, right?
Well, I mean, it's a either or. It's not both of these points.
Okay. What is the issue with the second point then?
Okay. So the second point was what you're bringing up right now, right? If we can go by evidence and we can say, well, evidence generally tells us that people who generally choose to kill themselves, they do so because of these reasons, and we know that probably you will feel better about your life in the future, to the best of our knowledge, because of these and these reasons, because that's happened to similar people, right? That's the other contingent, right? And I don't believe in either of those, right? I don't believe.
What's the issue with the second one then? The correct one, the one that actually captures the position I told you I've had like 4 times.
I swear, you have like a way of phrasing everything. Like I feel like every single time you respond,
Can you just spit out the counter argument?
nah, I'm just, it's just, I feel like I'm trying to, I feel like I'm pulling teeth with this conversation. I don't really need to
Yeah.
be here. Like, if you wanna,
Well, I don't need a guy who's going to rake in 4 viewers. I'm having this conversation because I want to actually discuss it with you, right? I want to convince you to do better in debates in the future. I want you to be good at advocacy, and I want you to have better at more sound ethical positions. I'm not forcing you to be here.
you're not doing a good job at it. Like,
I think that so I don't think that you have any idea if a good job's being done or not. I don't think you're capable of thinking through that in the moment, right? I think that you're not able to come up with a counter argument, and you're trying to dodge away from it.
so let's examine what you just said, right?
Let's examine the counter argument that you didn't give me yet.
Can I? Okay. So what you just said was the reason why
You're not going to?
me. The reason why you're talking to me is because you want me to do better in debates in the future in advocacy, right? And I'm telling you because you're basically saying,
Can you go ahead and give me a counter argument to the thing that you just dodged entirely? You just giggled at, like just sat there nervously?
okay, I'm trying to tell you, you're doing a bad job at the mission
I
statement.
I do not care about taking input from if you think I'm doing a bad job or not, right? Because you have no idea if a good job or a bad job is being done. You're not giving me a counter argument to the thing that I said earlier, right?
Of our conversation, really, like this
I want you to just give me a counter argument. You're just doing everything in your power to avoid it, right? You said there was an issue with that second point. What's the issue?
this is a real life example of the issue I take with your position, I think, and that's actually the funny part.
How?
Because I'm stating to you my preference, right? I'm telling you like what I think, what I believe, right? And your stated preference is that you're saying what you want out of this conversation is not bringing you viewers, it's not doing anything for you, right? So like in that sense, you're saying the only reason you're in this conversation is to change my mind and make sure that I do better advocacy in the future. And then I'm telling you from my perspective, like from my preferences, you're not achieving that. Right? You're not achieving that in the way that you're speaking to me and the arguments that you're
Is there a way we can cut the cry bullying and you can just give me the argument, the counter argument to the second point, the reason, the issue with the second one?
I feel like that was a really concrete reason.
No, that's not a
to
reason. That's just you saying.
you're presenting.
That's just you saying that your stated preferences are what I should be going with. I'm telling you, I don't think so. I think, in fact, it's a great example against your position. You have no idea if a good or a bad argument's being given, right? All you know is how convinced you feel. You don't know how convinced you're going to be post-discussion when you're sitting on the toilet, thinking about the arguments you could have made in the debate afterwards, right? You're not thinking about that right now. So I just want you to give me a counter argument to the second point that you said was bad.
Okay. maybe we should reconvene this in like maybe 5 or 10 years when I'm sitting at the toilet and I'm like, hey, you know what, Synth? Actually,
Just give me a counter argument, Dario.
what's the card argument? I'm trying.
No, it's just you stating, here, look at this. Look at how right I am. It's happening right now, right? That's not a counter argument.
I'm trying to explain to you in very
So
humorous terms.
if I could moderate here, I actually understand what you're saying, Dario. You're saying that Synth is doing a bad job at convincing you. This isn't the way that you would like to communicate in order to change your ideas. Like based on your experience, this kind of interaction, like Synth is doing right now, you think this doesn't change your mind, correct?
Well, yes, right. That's like the first. I guess that's the first thing I was trying to communicate, right? But moreover, right, what I'm actually trying to communicate is that I think this is a microcosm of why I don't believe in the type of argument that Synth is making, right? Because Synth is saying, well, if somebody clearly states their preferences over a large enough time, like we can use other evidence to make sure that actually they're wrong about their preferences and we as a society somehow can better determine their preferences
So
than they can, right? And what I'm saying now is I feel like that's happening to me right now, right? I'm clearly stating my preferences. I'm saying I don't prefer to have this kind of conversation, and Synth and probably his viewers or whatever, or their viewers, sorry, I don't know what pronouns do you go by.
They or she.
They or she, okay.
Uh-huh.
Their viewers probably also agree with them in that Synth is making a good argument, but that doesn't matter because all I care about is my own preferences and what I think is a good argument.
So allow me to like stillman Synth's position for you, and maybe like this can help you understand like where they come from, and maybe this also ties into like their overarching argument on this whole thing. I think what Synth is trying to do is basically just sort of, to put it in a funny way, demolish your arguments logically, right? What Synth is interested in is to like show to you that, hey, your arguments just like logically, they are bad, right? And Synth isn't like the kind of person that's usually very interested in coming across nicely to you, because they think it's more important to just like make you think that, damn, I couldn't give like a good argument to that person, I couldn't give them like a logical argument. And then when you will go, like, you will probably not change your mind during the debate, but maybe later on you'll keep thinking like, man, that interaction was so weird, that interaction was so aggressive, like what could I have told that person? And you keep thinking about it, and maybe that starts like some processing in your brain that over time will change your opinion. And I think there is some evidence that this can happen to people, right? We've seen like people in this space change their minds like out of a result of even like unpleasant interactions. Like I think Destiny, for example, often like debated people very aggressively, and clearly they didn't have a pleasant experience. They didn't change their mind then, but later on, like they just thought of it more and changed their mind. So I think that's sort of the strategy Synth is going by.
But there's a difference in sort of tonality and the way that you present things. And like when you say aggressive, like I don't believe Synth is being aggressive in like an argumentative sense. Like when I distill Synth's arguments, right? I think that's a fine conversation to have. We can have that argument, right? I didn't like when we were going through the arguments. I didn't mind that, right? But what I take issue with is that I have a feeling that when Synth talks to me, like we don't talk as two people having a conversation. We're talking as Synth is trying to dunk on me and destroy me, like from pretty much like the second I jumped into the convo and I was like, "How are you guys doing? Like, what's your day been like?" And Synth was like, "I'm just trying to set up and prepare for the convo." And then boom, we came into like we're having a utilitarian debate, and I was like, "Oh shit, I wasn't at all like ready for that." I felt like the entire time, like maybe you can call it like unpersonable or whatever, but like I felt like that sort of makes it really hard for me to stay engaged in the actual arguments of the conversation, which I didn't mind having. Like we can go through the logic tree, and I agree, right? Like in the hypothetical scenario so far, right? I think we have some agreement there, but I think what I take issue with is when we take it from there into like how we could structure that in the real world, and yeah, I think that's where we're at.
Do you think that the approach is bad logically, or is it just makes you feel bad? Is that it? It just makes you feel bad?
It's the approach is bad in terms of like what you're trying to achieve.
Can you is what I'm trying to achieve make you feel good?
No, it makes me feel very bad.
Okay. So, is the logic, do you think there are any holes in the logic of the argument I'm giving you?
No, I feel like I've already said that, right? I don't. I felt
Okay.
like we're having.
Then I'm not. I don't want to sit here and do like how do I make sure that Dario doesn't cry, right? I want you to give me the counter argument to the second point that you brought up, right? You brought up one point. I told you that wasn't my position. You brought up a second point. I told you that second point is my position, but there's not an issue with it, right? And I'm still asking you, what's the issue with that position? And you've just spent like, I don't know, like 5 minutes crying or something about the fact that I'm being aggressive with you. Just give me an answer to that question.
I'm trying to explain to you in a very human way, in a very human way, my issue with this conversation and why I don't think we're gonna get much further in terms of like the logical aspect of it. And I'm trying to explain my experience of having a conversation with you. Right? Like if you don't care about that, I mean that's fine. Like we don't have to continue. Right? I'm just trying to maybe somebody else cares or whatever. If nobody cares, I mean I can just
So
leave.
I'm curious, for example, because I am actually very interested in this. Like, I want to see if you actually have like a counter argument to synth, and if there is something more we can discover out of that. So, do you think is there anything that synth can do to like accommodate you even like a little bit more in order to continue this conversation? Like, just
I felt that I felt at the first like 10 minutes or so, I felt like it was like a unnecessarily like bad vibes, I guess, in the conversation. But I kept going. Then we had a productive conversation. Then I sort of felt like we looped back. So I don't know, like
Have you considered the fact that we were having a productive discussion? You made some like juvenile jab about viewership, right? And then that's why I started getting aggressive with you. Have you considered that maybe like normal people, when you're like, and when you insult them, they start being mean to you?
sure.
Is this your first time insulting a person and having them be mean to you in response?
Yes, that's
Okay. Well, first time for everything, right? In the future,
and this is not
it's live, so you can just grab it off the channel if you didn't, right? So
yeah.
if you're gonna insult somebody, right, and during a discussion, they're gonna be a little bit more aggressive to you tonally, right? Just give me the argument against the second point. I'm waiting for it still. You're just doing everything in your power to not do that because you don't have one.
Okay. Like listen, this might just be me, right? But like, do you understand where I'm getting at, Luca? Like when when this is the response, right? Like if I if I was trying to have a productive conversation with somebody, I'd be like, hey, listen, okay, I understand maybe there was some
Stop crying. Just give me the counter argument to the second point.
Dario, to make an appeal to you, so I actually can see sort of both of you and Synth's points. I think what has happened is that you are like very obviously taken aback by like some of by how Synth is talking to you. I think though there are also like small things that you said that at times bothered Synth that maybe you are not fully aware of.
Yeah, I'll if it's about like the jab or whatever. Listen, I'm sorry. I was just trying to make like an off the cuff or whatever. Like it was basically the reason why I brought up viewership or whatever was because you used the word like everybody could see that the joke didn't land or whatever. Like you appealed to like oh, it was obvious to everybody, right? So that's why I used the viewership to say like, well, who is everybody in this context, right? Like it wasn't just an off the cuff like, haha, you have like this amount of viewers.
It was off the cuff. You just said it was off the cuff. Wait, within like the course of 30 seconds, you went from it was off the cuff to it's not off the cuff, right? I don't care about sitting with here and like I don't know.
Exactly.
Cool. I know you're I know. That's not the point. The point is not. I'm just trying to get to the point, right? Which is just the second point. Give me a counter argument to it, please, Dario.
I don't remember what the second point was. I was just
I
trying
get-
to say
I do. I can remind you.
for like the jab. Sure.
Okay. Okay. All is forgiven. Let's just talk about the discussion.
Yeah, I will just say as a moderator, Dario,
Okay.
I understand how this went wrong for you. I think you now also have like some idea of why that went wrong for Synth. But I am really truly curious about like the argument. So if Synth can repeat it, do you think maybe we can try and get back into the logical conversation? Because I think even you agree that was interesting.
Sure, we can try a little bit, but yeah.
If it doesn't work, then that's it. I
Sure,
hope
sure.
we won't have hard feelings and everything.
Sure.
But yeah.
Listen,
so Synth, if you
Luca,
can.
Luca,
I can repeat it.
do it. Luca, we can do it because I think you have been exemplary in this conversation, and I really like the way that you speak. So for your sake, I will continue.
Okay.
Dario.
Thank you very much. So Synth, if you can just read with no jabs, Synth.
I'll make sure not to. I'll make sure not to hurt Dario's feelings or anything like that.
Hey, it hurts my feelings.
Okay, we'll make sure not to. We'll make sure not to. Okay.
I will
You named two.
I will just say, Dario, like I care about your feelings. I also care about Sin feelings, and I think I probably should have came in when you said the for, like the viewer commentary, just because that maybe would have prevented all of
Listen,
this.
that
But yeah,
came off wrong. Like I apologize. Like I didn't. I guess I didn't. I
Okay,
understand.
is there any way we can skip to the argument? I remember both of them. Okay, I remember both of the arguments you made. I'll remind you of them.
Go for it.
I'm dying over here. Okay, the first one you made, right? The first argument you made was that you thought my position was that it's the case that you thought it was the case that you have to know the preferences of the person somehow. It's not, right? And then you immediately said, okay, the second argument is instead of it you knowing the preferences, you have to abduct from you have to use evidence to gather their preferences instead of taking what they say at face value, right? That was your second point. I'm telling you, yes, that captures my position. There's nothing wrong with that second point. That one's correct. I'm asking you, what's the incorrect aspect of that? You were saying this is the flaw in my position.
I don't believe that there's like there might be for like some extreme cases where the collected evidence would overwrite the criteria I've already put for the person. But I think in the vast majority of cases, I think the criteria that I put for the person already in terms of like trying to gather their own opinions about their own preferences, I think that's going to override it.
You think no, that's you don't even think that's overriding it. You think that's part of it, right? You think that's the stronger portion of the evidence. So if that was the case, that means that you agree with the second point. You agree with the second point, then there's no issue with that.
yeah. So he agrees with the point, like logically, but when we come to the like the application of it, right? He creates his heuristics because he thinks that there isn't enough evidence to reason like your way, Sam, right? So I guess like what would be your points regarding the evidence on assessing that?
Yeah, it's like Dario said, there are some cases where the evidence does outweigh just listening to people's individual preferences. And in those cases, instead of listening to their individual preferences, we go with the totality of the evidence, not just a small portion of it. And when their individual preferences are outweighing the very small amount of evidence we have anywhere else, right? Maybe we just have their individual preferences, for example, we go with that. And so the second point is not one that you think is a problem with the position. You agree with that. It's part of your position.
Well, yes, right. But what I'm trying to explain, right, and I think Luca put it. I don't. I guess I don't know how else to do rather than just restate what Luca did, right? So for me, I guess maybe visually, like there's two decisions, right? Either we allow the person to kill themselves, or we don't allow the person to kill themselves, right? And in the way that you propose that we gather evidence, I think maybe 1% of the time that would overwrite the information we have about them that they gave themselves. But in 99% of cases, I think the way that I would gather the evidence in terms of like the criteria over time, asking them, making sure they have some like that would override it. So like yeah, maybe in 1% of the cases, like in the extreme circumstances, I would agree with you. But I think practically in the vast majority of cases, I think it would work in the way that I portrayed it.
You think in the vast majority of cases it would work in the way that you portrayed it, but there are some exceptions, right?
Yeah.
Okay, which means that the way in which you portrayed it is a worse principle than the ones that I have, right? Because mine works every case, yours only works in a sub portion of them.
Sure. If that's how you wanna how you wanna say it.
Well, no, because since I think Dario actually agrees with you on the principle, he just agrees you on like empirical data.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's the case that Dario's principle actually accurately captures the empirical data on this. I think that the actual principle that you're espousing is one which only captures a subportion of cases, and this one captures all of them, right? And so when it comes to people's individual preferences, we can use those as evidence, but contrary evidence can outweigh that. You agree with this. You agree it can outweigh that. And so the actual preferences that we should go with, just a second, the actual preference we should go, or sorry, the actual route we should go with is not just their individual preferences, but the totality of the evidence, which means mine captures every case and yours captures a subset, right?
Sure. And what I'm trying to explain is I agree with that, right? I agree with you and I will grant you that position, right? But I think the caveat I would just put there is that it seems to me, and I might be wrong, but it seems to me when you're speaking about it, you're saying, well, um, asking them like in the criteria I put forward, maybe that's like there's like a scale of like a maximum of 100, right? And we're trying to reach 100 certainty, and then what they're saying themselves, maybe that weighs like maybe that can weigh up to like 20%.
Mhm.
And the other evidence we have from like outside and like what other people are saying and like other people, maybe that's like 80%, right? And what I'm saying is it's more like maybe it's like 70-30, like 70 to there and then 30 to them. And if the 30% is really strong, then yeah, maybe that's going to override them. But maybe it's not going to override them permanently. It's going to override them. Maybe it's like for the suicidal person, maybe it's like, we're going to give you a few more years to think about it, right? Maybe that's where I'm at. Does that
Well,
make sense?
sometimes thinking about things for long periods of time doesn't bring people to better positions. Sometimes people think about things for very, very long periods of times and they get stuck in their ways, right? So
Sure.
if we talk back about that original example, right, the Steelman version of it, which is somebody's been talking to their doctor for years, right? They know that they really does. They're not mentally ill. They're really of sound mind, right? They're able to consent, and they've been talking about this for years. And they want to rip their eyeballs out because it makes them horny. You think that they should be able to do that, but I think there's strong evidence against the idea that ripping your eyeballs out will maximize your preferences, even if it makes you horny. Which is, you've got a lot more preferences than just being horny, right?
But sure. Obviously, yeah. But like maybe for some reason, like this person doesn't have like preferences which would override them both losing an eye and being horny. Maybe that's going to be a net positive for them personally. While it might not be the correct decision for like 90% of society, but maybe for this person, in this case, it's the right decision just for them.
So
So
maybe I have an interesting thing to add here. So from my understanding, when it comes to like mental illnesses, do you know, Dario, are you familiar with like how we actually evaluate if someone is mentally ill in some regards, like if they do
I
some
mean,
action?
vaguely, but I mean, if you want to,
So, in my understanding, and I'm a layman, I won't pretend to be an
yeah,
expert of this,
same,
but
yeah.
in my understanding, right, what the doctor would actually look at is like how it affects the well-being of that person.
So
So
like,
generally, if a person wants to kill themselves, even if it's over like a long period of time or something like that, the reason it's okay to stop them is because normally people still have things to live for, right? We assume that if a person gets into a state where they're actually like going on with killing themselves, that's actually them being like irrational. They're actually not
sure,
capable
and
of
that's
consent, and we
sure.
stop them in that
Sure,
regard.
and that's an argument I guess I've heard before is that just in virtue of them coming to the conclusion that they want to kill themselves, that itself is inherently irrational. So you can never be of rational mind and want to kill yourself.
So there are some cases where we do allow it, right? So for example, if you're like terminally ill with something that we know medically is only going to make you suffer for a couple more like weeks or something like that, and it's going to be horrendously painful and you're going to die at the end anyways, we do believe that you probably get more well-being from dying in a dignified way, maybe surrounded by friends and family, right? So that's an example where we do allow it.
Sure, but
But
how many?
generally we wouldn't allow it just because people consent to it.
Sure, but do you believe in that? So, or are you just saying society?
Oh, I actually do believe in that. I think it would be okay in like these terminal cases where a person doesn't have much longer to live. They're only going to like suffer incredibly. It's probably okay to like allow them to die in a dignified way. It probably produces more well-being.
So, so the way that I used to think about this, and this was an argument I had before, um, the way that I used to think about it was that living inherently had some amount of well-being inherently associated with it that could never be below zero, right? At the very least, like just living rather than dying, that would be maybe like a one on well-being on a scale of like 1 to 100, right? So you can never go below zero, right? So
Mhm.
if you so maybe you don't agree with this, maybe you think it can go below
I,
zero.
I think so I'm a utilitarian and I think the utilitarian math here actually works both ways. If you assume negative utility, then it's fairly obvious how it works. If you assume that only positive utilities is a thing, I think it would still work out because that spike in utility, we would just say that that's probably bigger than like the remaining well-being you would have during those weeks where you're
Sure,
like
but are you
tortured.
sure? But when you're saying that, are you considering the spike in utility to like everybody else around them, or like to the
Oh
person?
yeah, to the whole world as well. Yeah.
Sure. I guess maybe I don't view it like maybe I
Because I
don't view
think
it.
also like the family members, for example, would be happy that the relative doesn't
Sure.
sit there and screams in pain as they're dying, right,
Sure.
for like a
I,
week or two.
yeah, I understand. So I think maybe the way that I view it, currently at least, and listen, okay, I'm gonna be honest. I've changed my views on a lot of things over the time. Like I've changed my ethics maybe I don't know how many times during the years, right? And the way that I view it right now is that I think in terms of like when we look at like utility and sort of people's preferences, I think we have to do that in a more individual way, right? So I don't think we can ever say, oh, well, killing this person or like murdering this person is gonna bring positive utility to the world, because even though it's going to bring, like, if murdering this person is going to be like, oh, that's going to be a -10 on their utility scale, right? But like it's going to bring a +100 to the world, then we should make that decision every time, right? I don't believe that's something we can do. And that's
So when you are a utilitarian, right, you're trying to basically maximize utility for like everyone in a sense. You're trying to reach like the best possible world that you can to like the choices that you can make, right? So when it comes a utilitarian will just make a rule like, oh, it's okay to like infinitely kill like some random people, right? Because of some utility in the moment. Because people, for example, can produce a lot of utility just by existing, right? If we can, for example, let's say we have a super dangerous criminal. If we can put them in a prison for the rest of their life and they can live somewhat happily in there, it's probably better than killing them, executing them.
sure, but I would say sure, but I would say that goes into like a, maybe you think everything is the same, right? I think that goes into a slightly different conversation, right? But what I'm asking is specifically is like, I believe there was like a, fuck, it's been a while since I've looked this up.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't aware we were having a deep utilitarian conversation. Or maybe you don't think that's deep, but like, isn't there like a hypothetical with like, oh, if there was like an island of people and we could like enslave that island of people, then overall it's gonna bring positive utility to the world. Like, should we do that? Right? Something like that.
So, as a utilitarian, right, you don't just care about increasing utility, like having an arbitrary net amount, right? You care of having like the best possible amount that you can get. So, even if you grant something like, oh, enslaving these people could like increase the utility of some other people, if you can argue in some other way that no, because if we actually allow these people to be free, if we organize in some other manner, the overall positive utility of everyone will be higher, right, on
Yeah.
aggregate.
Yeah. Sure.
Then that's how you would escape that
Sure, and
essentially.
I sure and I sure, but like, but that kind of, I guess that kind of escapes it, but unlike on a, I guess on a technicality, I guess. So like, the actual question is, if it did increase like overall utility, right, then you would have
So it
to
doesn't have to increase, it has to maximize it. It means
maximize.
that
Yeah,
there is
if that
no
was the,
other
yeah,
possible thing,
yeah,
you
if
know
that was the thing
yeah.
that we knew would maximize utility to the best of our knowledge, you would bite that bullet and say, sure, let's enslave the island of people to maximize utility because
Yeah, so often this is called like a repugnant conclusion, but this can
yeah.
sort of happen with any ethical system, right? If a
Oh, sure.
deontologist, for example, tells me they have a rule, I can just ask them, what if you have to break the rule? And if you don't break it, 1 trillion people are going to be tortured for like infinity, right? Technically, a deontologist would have to bite that bullet, whereas a utilitarian wouldn't.
That's sure. That's fine. I guess. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah.
A
Yeah. No.
utilitarian, to give an example, like a question that someone asked me just today was like, oh, would you be okay with a genocide as a utilitarian if it maximized utility? And I think when you frame it like that, to people it sounds really bad. But if you frame it in a like realistic way, if you give like a name for that maximizing utility, let's say you have to pick a genocide instead of 1 trillion equally bad genocides. You'd obviously pick like the lesser of two evils, right? It's not that the one genocide is good. It's just that you're picking the lesser of two evils.
Sure. Sure. I guess I'm lost in terms of where we are. Oh yeah, we were in terms of like, like
Yeah, so
the
I guess,
allowing the person in the room to die like a week before, dignified in front of their family or whatever.
yeah. I
Yeah.
would say that in like the cases in which we actually allow like euthanasia, or I would say like we almost never allow self-mutilation. Mutilation like always carries an implication that it's bad. There are, for example, people that have a mental disease where they feel like a part of their body really bothers them. Basically, like their brain thinks that that part is like a sort of cancer or a tumor.
I
In
feel like
those
that's
cases, it might be valid medically to, for example, allow them to amputate certain parts of their body just because it causes an incredible discomfort or something like
yeah.
that. But again, that would be more of a
Wouldn't be
medical choice. The
sure, but
consent
that
of the person isn't like just the ultimate thing that we look for.
sure, but that wouldn't be, or maybe that would be. Maybe this is like a language thing. Is that would that be considered mutilation?
Um, I'm not sure if it would. I
I
don't know
feel
if
like
Sin has any insight on this.
sure.
But that's just a semantic thing at the end of the day, because my point would just be, and
Yeah.
Sin's
Yeah.
as well, is that well-being of people is what we should care about, right? And I think like as a left-leaning person, you also care in general about the well-being of people.
Well, I mean, I think most people would care about that. But yeah, I think I mean yeah, I think caring about well-being of people is fine. I think there comes a point where you have to basically ask yourself, uh, well, how do we practically achieve the
Mhm.
most well-being we can for people at this time, right? And for that, it might be the case that let's say we know of a so like let's say we know of a completely optimal choice which would completely maximize well-being for like every single person on earth, but we also know that this option maybe has a 1% chance of a success, and maybe we can do another option which maybe has a 99% chance of success, but it's only going to be like it's going to be two-thirds of the well-being, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
so like the question is, well, do we go for like the thing which would potentially maximize complete well-being for everybody, or do we go for like the more sure way to sort of build up towards that, and maybe in the future we can go for that like 100% scenario or whatever, but yeah.
Unless I'm mistaken, like mathematically, there are like actual ways in which we can reason about it, like some sort of gambling theory or something like that.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea that because it's more sure, it's somehow more preferred just doesn't make much sense. If it was the case that you could like uh, you had like a million chances to play roulette, and even if it ever lands on red once, you become like a quadruple billionaire if you're only betting pennies or something. Then like you should be doing that. That's a good gamble. If it's the case that you have like a guaranteed chance of like earning 1 penny, though, it's just not even worth the time, right? So it's just
Yeah,
it makes very little sense to say that there's more value to it because it's more sure.
I I understand that. That wasn't necessarily the point I was trying to make. I was saying let's say that the gamble or like the numbers were basically in the way that I was trying to explain it. Why I like in the numbers were in my favor and not in your favor, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is a position you hold. Then I would. That's why I think I prefer the thing that I'm advocating for is because I think the numbers are in my favor, not
That
because.
well, then you're just advocating in favor of maximizing everyone's preferences on aggregate. You just are advocating for that.
Sorry, can you? I think you cut out.
If you think that the numbers being in your favor is what matters, then you just do care about exclusively maximizing everyone's preferences on aggregate. You just think that what you're doing does that.
Like, yeah, but what that? Yeah, sure. I think most people care about that. I guess at the end of the day.
So not literally anybody who's not a utilitarian wouldn't, right? That's just the definition of it.
Sure, sure.
Okay, and that would include you, right? As you've said on Twitter in the past, you said you're not a utilitarian, so that should include you for sure.
Sure, I've changed my mind on that a bit.
Okay. Do you want to take callers or something? Are you cool with that?
Sure, we can.
Okay. If I know Gami had issues with your debate as well, who wanted to pop in, I'll let her.
Okay, but Gami, please be somewhat nice. Okay, I will moderate this.
Listen, Gami. Okay, listen, Gami. Okay, if
Gami, please have like a
you're
super
gonna hurt
good
my
point.
feelings, you're gonna hurt my
Or
feelings.
Gami, like, just tell Dario what he could have done better, something like that. Like, hey, here is like how you will win the next debate with Mr. Girl. Do something like that. Oh, okay, Phenomics joined as well.
Yeah, I'll try to make sure that it's only one person at a time hopping in. Did
I ringed Gami as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, you. It's all right. Whoever wants to pop in can.
They can mute themselves. They can just mute themselves.
Wait.
Sure.
Wait, am I gonna be canceled now because I'm gonna talk?
No. You're not. If anything, Gami's gonna be the one cancelled. Don't worry about that.
I feel like Gami has quite the reputation on progressive Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay, Gami needs 10 minutes anyways. So
Yeah. So I guess the argument I would make to you, Dario, based on like what we discussed, it seems like you are somewhat like in agreement with utilitarian ethics. I would say like when it comes to the bullet that you bit, that's okay if people consent. Even if you add like those extreme stipulations, like your heuristics that you try to uncover with synth, I think it's better to just default to like the medical consensus, other than try to make your own heuristics.
Sure, but so the reason why I don't like to default to the medical consensus is because
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Girl's response is, well, the entire medical field is taken over by a trans cult, so I can't do that.
Yeah. So I think that is what probably Phonomics and Gami are going to complain to you about. They're basically going to tell you that is what you should have debated Mr. Gull on, because that's a very, very strong point and there's a lot of evidence for it. Maybe you're just
Sure,
not familiar with it as they are.
well, no, sure. So, well, I mean, I'm pretty confident that the medical community has not been taken over by trans cult, if that's what
But
what
maybe
you're
you're not
implying.
super confident in debating that, right?
No, so the reason why I didn't go that angle is because the debate would, I feel like the debate would end there. I mean, I could bring up some points and I could say, well, we can look at like these whatever journals or stuff like or whatever, or just like appeal to common sense. I think
Do
a
you
lot of the way.
Well, no, because I
do you
think like
can I
yeah.
can I say do you think that like a lot of your approach might a lot of your approach that you have during conversations that maybe there are ways actually to dig down deeper and sometimes you just sort of like maybe default to thought terminating cliches as opposed to digging deeper? Do you think that could be a thing?
I don't think I'm understanding what you're trying to get on.
Do you think that maybe there's an approach you could have to conversations where you do in fact dig down deeper and don't just cut it off and say that's where it stops, that's just my opinion, bro, right? Like I think you actually could dig deeper into like what reasons do we have to believe that there is a to believe that there's this conspiracy, right? What is the evidence we have to believe that there's not one, right? You could do something like that.
Did you, sure. So did you watch? I guess you didn't. Whatever.
Didn't watch what?
So yeah, so Max had a conversation with Rose Wrist, and this
No,
was
I haven't
one of
watched
the
theirs.
things yeah, this was one of the things they specifically talked about, right? And like what Rose Wrist tried to do was, I assume, I think if you watched the Rose Wrist convo, you'd be like, oh, this is specifically everything Dyer should have done. Rose Wrist did this, right? Because he, they, I
But
don't know.
clearly, Mr.
Ro-
Go wasn't convinced, right? So maybe you could have
exactly,
identified something in
exactly.
the debate, like, hey, maybe this is what Rose Wrist didn't do, all right?
But I don't think so that's what I'm trying to explain is I don't think Rose Wrist could have done anything better. I think Rose did as probably way better than I could in that field of like doing those things. And ultimately Mr. Gill wasn't convinced by those types of arguments because like I think he made Mr. Gill made the argument that like after like Rose Wrist went through some studies and like some faults with like studies Max brought up, like he had basically every single study nailed down and could bring
Hmm.
up like this, and this. At the end, like Max said, listen, that's all part of the cult. That's why nobody's wants to talk about this. And he said he got an email from like one of his viewers who had a friend who had a professor who wanted to come on and talk to Max because he had been canceled at his university. Like super obviously like not good arguments like to the but like ultimately like that like sort of like conspiracy I guess, but that's sort of the road he went down, and ultimately he just ended up like
I see.
yelling at Rose Wrist, and like that's what I'm like 99% sure that's would have happened
Mhm.
if I just gone down the same road, right? And I specifically went into that conversation having that knowledge that this is the response Max would give, and I didn't want to have that conversation. I wanted to try and push him in a different direction. And yes, I will agree. Obviously, I failed at that, right? I didn't achieve the goal that I set out to do, right? But I didn't fail because I didn't talk to him like Rose Wrist did, right? Because I never intended to do that. Maybe you think I failed in a different way, um, right? But like first of all, I think Rose probably did a better job than I could at that. I think he's probably got more things prepared, looked
I
up for
think,
that.
just in my opinion, and after that, I would like to maybe get Phonomics to share some feedback. In my view, I think even with the road you were trying to go on, what I would have done is that I would have challenged Mr. Girl philosophically first, and then use philosophy and ethics in order to build up to like things where he would start calling out conspiracies, and then use also philosophy to attack him on that. I think maybe that could have been like taking a very bottom to top approach with him.
That was kind of what I was trying to do. I didn't start with the full. Like I mean, if you watched the did you watch the entire show,
We
including after the
didn't
debate?
we didn't watch the 4 hours. We watched 2 hours.
Okay,
Gami
so
watched all of 4 hours though. So when Gami comes, she
sure.
actually did watch all four
Sure.
hours
Sure. So I think we had 4 hours on Destiny stream and also 45 minutes, an hour maybe on
with
Mr. Girl
that.
stream after.
Oh, okay.
Only Mr. Girl, not with Destiny, and like just on his stream. So like in the span of that, a lot of things happened, and I think a lot of those things, if you watch it all in context, I think sort of maybe better illustrates why I made the decisions that I did going in. Right. So like during that like 5 hour, I guess total, he also said, right, he did not want to discuss ethics or philosophy at all, right? Even a question that sounded like being ethical or philosophical, he would just dismiss and say like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about that. He said that when I tried to bring that up, right? So like I don't think that would have worked. Like my approach was I wanted to have an ethical discussion with him, but I was trying to disguise it behind like some things that didn't sound ethical, right? That was, I guess, what I was trying to do.
Yeah, I guess phonomics or oh god, phonomics. Do you want to go or would you let
I'll
go?
just wait until, if you guys can hear me, I'll just wait until
We can hear you.
the person who's here first. I can talk whenever though.
Okay.
Yeah,
I also can set my camera, but I don't have any clean clothes.
Okay.
That's fair.
So yeah, phonomics. Do you want to go?
sure. There's two things mainly that I want to talk about. One, I wanted to talk about like the liberty and bodily autonomy points because I think that
Give me just
your
30 seconds. 30 seconds. You're back.
okay.
Also, just to check phonomics, have you watched the stream so far, or did you just join in blind?
Oh no, I've been streaming this shit to the
Oh,
KFC
nice.
chat. All right, everybody's been watching.
I
from
watched like
the-
most of it, but I quit because when.
Okay. So, phonomics. I hope like get that Darius probably like more utilitarianish now. He was just trying to do an argument. But if you have something more to add to that, go for it.
Sure, I was going to give the liberty utilitarian arguments basically.
Okay, sure. So yeah, Dario is back here if you want to go.
Okay, hey. So let's just go point by point. I guess we can talk about the other part next. I was just gonna say that like even if we grant that like liberty or bodily autonomy is our fundamental principle, we probably still shouldn't grant that you should be able to like chop your eyes out without without more consideration. The what it would come down to is like the freedom granted by your eyes, by the ability of sight, is significantly more than the freedom of this like one decision that you get to make to cut them out, barring like extreme barring some extreme situation where the eyes like somehow in some way like reduce freedom to some significant degree, right? The ability to see gives you the ability to like to be free to make decisions and like fulfill your interests in like in ways that you wouldn't be able to without your eyes.
Yeah, Dario, do you have anything about that to say?
Yeah, and I agree with that, right? So the I guess the argument that I'm making is I'm making that argument and I'm saying in a very extreme scenario we would allow this, right? And I think the scenario I am presenting is also is a rather extreme scenario, right? Like
This
that
scenario where you like talk to a doctor and they agree that that's the thing that you said you want, and that
yeah, I
you're
would say that.
and you're in a sound state of mind.
Sure, I would say gouging your eye out. Maybe one eye isn't as extreme, but like both eyes, probably that would be like very, very extreme. Close to like killing yourself, maybe like 20% worse. Yeah, I would say that's like a very extreme. And like within my system, like within the framework I'm proposing, that would require like I guess the utmost of care before you would be allowed to do that. And maybe you disagree with like the another word you use, heuristics. Maybe that's a wrong word to use here, but like the practicality of like how we would determine that. But I would say that's also an extreme scenario.
So when I say it's an extreme scenario, I don't mean that like the gouging your eyes out is the extremity, right? I mean that it's an extreme scenario in which it would be good to allow them to gouge their eyes out, such that it like we ought set the heuristic that we ought not let people take away their own freedom in the same way that like killing yourself is taking away your own freedom, in the same way that like gouging your eyes out is taking away your own freedom because it takes away your ability to fulfill your interests in the
Sure.
future.
So
Sure,
I'm curious.
but if oh
Yeah, if I can add something that maybe is useful here. Phenomics, what do you think about people that have like an identifiable like mental issue where they feel, they feel like a part of their body isn't actually theirs and it causes like extreme mental discomfort for them to have that body? Do you think that, for example, amputation should be allowed in those cases?
So if we have like a doctor who can suggest that like it's very very likely that this that the like suffering caused by this takes is like so distracting or so XYZ that it like takes away from the ability to like fulfill your own interests to a greater extent than not having that would be. I think this is fine, but I don't think that the idea should be like you being in a sound state of mind or something like that. I think that the criteria behind that should be like the doctor determines that like there is more liberty involved in this
Yeah. So
situation.
I guess to move all of this back to Dario and maybe like bring a conclusion to this whole thing, I think the main criticism towards what you were trying to say, Dario, is that you were trying to like come up with good heuristics for allowing this sort of like on your own. But it feels like you would agree in the end that maybe the heuristics you were trying to build were not the best. And it's likely that we should just appeal to like the medical community instead of like heuristics around consent, correct?
Sure. So I think there's like a sure. So I think there's a fundamental difference there. So I actually had a response to phenomics, and I
Oh,
There's
okay.
not a fundamental difference. We're both utilitarian.
oh I'm yeah sure I'm I guess so. Before I forget my response, I was curious how you would respond to this, right? So like let's say we go by what you suggested, right? And like we put up like all of these criteria for freedom. We go like, oh, well, we decided you're gonna have more freedom if you do not do this, and you can't do this, you can't do this, and you can't, and we keep going down the list. And at some point, isn't there a point where you would say, well, actually, how is it even freedom anymore? Like, like if we go through every single thing and you can't do anything because we believe it's gonna give you more freedom, but by doing that, we're taking away all of these things, all of these freedoms, right? At some point, we're gonna reach an equilibrium where we're like, well, actually, it's not really freedom anymore. We're just kind of telling
Yeah,
you what you can do.
at the point where it stops maximizing freedom, right? I seek to maximize freedom. Obviously, there's like there is some point where like either a doctor is not going to be able to know or like et cetera, et cetera. Like there's going to be a lack of freedom involved in the situation.
Sure.
My point is that this is not that scenario, right? In the case of like mutilation of oneself or like amputation of a body part that is explicitly like human eyes are one of the biggest points that grant humans freedom, right? It's like first the first the eyes, second the opposable thumbs, or sorry, first the brain, second the opposable thumbs, and then like third the eyes. These are probably like the three most freedom granting uh, body parts that you have that are like able to allow you to fulfill your interests the most. These should be like taken with extreme caution before we say it's like possible to get rid of any of these, barring just like the
What
fact
would you
that like a
say?
number of organs are necessary for like survival, and so
What
they're
would
all
you
like technically more useful to human freedom.
What would you say in a future scenario where you can, let's say, you can install a mainframe in your brain, which can act as your eyesight instead of your eyes, or like it can convey the information instead?
What do you
Cybernetics, I don't think are even remotely comparable to mutilation.
I'm
In the
just
same way that
asking.
I don't think that
I'm not. I'm just asking. I'm not comparing. I guess.
Dario's asking if you think it would be sick as fuck to be like to have cool robot eyes.
Yes.
yeah, it would
Yes.
be based as fuck to have cool robot eyes. I
Yes.
agree.
And then wait, and then you can gouge out literally everything and replace it with a robot, and we would all be better for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
Based,
that it would be at that exact
based.
point in time, but like I think that you could replace most of the human body with cybernetic parts.
Yeah, I
Based.
think even Gami is saying in chat that she's a transhuman, so I think everyone is on
Same.
you. Everyone wants to
Same.
be cyberpunk here. But
Same.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that that's like fundamentally really different from like like a mutilation, right? I think that this is like
Sure.
vast, like this
I
is
guess
more
what I was
equivalent to like a surgery where like
sure.
we install a pacemaker, right? Like this is like more
Sure.
equivalent to that.
I guess the point that I take issue with, maybe that's also like one of the issues I took with like halfway through the convo with Max was like, I have just such a hard time deciding, like, I mean, maybe this, like, the disagreement we have, I guess, is I have a hard time deciding for others what is going to grant them freedom, like, and this, or like utility,
It,
Well,
like,
that's ridiculous, right? You would impose
I
democracy on other people, right?
I mean, yes, but I would say the point of democracy um is to mediate between, like, different people, like, that all have to coexist within a society.
I think
I think I would be, and I
Sure,
might change my mind
you
on
would
this.
force a constitution of like a bill of rights onto people, right? This is
Yeah,
something you
yeah,
would force
but
on them.
like, yeah, but I would prefer, like, and like, and this might be something I also change my mind on, but like right now I think I would prefer if everybody lived in, like, the experience machine, right? And that they didn't have to be like a democracy. They could just do whatever they would want to all the time, and they didn't have to live in a democracy. They could just be like a dictator, or live in a democracy if that's what they prefer, right? But yeah,
yeah,
Um,
I would say democracy is a means to an end, or like a necessary evil.
yeah,
sure.
obviously.
I would say the same thing about eyes, though, right?
Sure, but like that's like a
In the
more,
real world, we have to operate on heuristics, not on like hypothetical.
yeah, but that's,
So
yeah,
in the real world, we can say that like we can operate on the heuristic of it. We ought not let people do things that will fundamentally remove a significant degree of their freedom, right? When we talk about like cybernetics, this is increasing functionality or at least
okay. But do
maintaining
you,
functionality.
but do you
Whereas
think,
with these are like obviously decreasing freedom
sure,
in the vast majority of cases.
but do you, I agree in the vast majority of cases, probably, right? But what I'm saying is, like, do you also agree that there could be a case where we could find a human being where gouging both of their eyes out would just give them so much pleasure constantly every single day that that would be, like, preferable to them having the eyes?
So I think
So
that
I
for every heuristic, there are exceptions, but I don't think that we can make general societal rules like laws and social precedents that we can set without
I mean, that's,
unless we operate on like with that won't some not be that won't be bad for certain groups of people, right? We can't get everybody to like do the utility calculus every time they take an action, and we can't like
like
have the law be like you ought maximize utility or else. So when we're
so
setting like laws and social precedents, we ought like set social precedents that are easy to follow and that are generally good. And I think that in again the vast majority of
that's,
cases,
to
this is
yeah,
going
I
to
mean,
be
clarify a bit here, Dario, like the thing is, the super extreme case that you are talking about and that you seem to be worried about, in my view, I think that already exists. I think there do exist people that have like certain mental illnesses where a part of their body, just because of like what's going on in their brain, just feels like a tumor, just feels like it's causing them so much discomfort. And the ways that doctors usually evaluate that, because I think that's kind of what you are wondering. Well, okay, but how could we tell? How do we know we're not inadvertently
yeah,
causing someone to suffer because we cannot probably identify this?
yeah. So
Generally, the
yeah,
way yeah, so in my understanding, generally how doctors evaluate this is by talking to the patient and also like observing their behavior.
yeah,
Normally you just ask a patient about their behavior, but in extreme cases you'd also like ask other people or try and observe it in some way. And there are with these people we can actually observe that they constantly seem to like have an issue with like a part of their body, right? And that this is like just so consistent that we just like accept it. So I
yeah.
think
And this,
if those are the cases you were thinking of that does exist medically, I think that basically should have just been aware of that,
sure,
and you would
sure.
have been in agreement with us on everything.
Well, sure. I mean, I think I did, like, I think end up agreeing with the correct framing that the arguments Synth was making, right? But I guess where I disagree is, I guess, the application, or like the practicality of it, right? So I agree in theory, like, in terms of like, this is how we should view it, but not like this is how we should implement it.
Yeah,
And the only issue I have is like in how we could implement it. And I
right.
think
That's
but
why both
even
Nanya and my arguments have been about implementation, right?
I, sure, I
so
maybe,
that's I guess
So can
like
you
for
address our
example,
argument?
uh,
I'm
let me ask him something, Phenomic. So, at this point, for example, Dario, do you think that maybe like the standard that I am suggesting, which is just that we have doctors evaluate people to see if like they actually do require for that organ to be removed. Do you think that maybe that is still not good enough in your view? Do you think there are still some edge cases that would slip past that we should be mindful of?
Yeah, I think the cases where yeah, like basically the cases that I described, right? Like where like we have people where genuinely they would just be happier off if they got to modify their body in this way. And we should be able to identify that somehow. And I'm not necessarily even saying that we have the ability to identify that currently, but I'm saying in principle we should have the ability to identify that. And if we have that ability, then they should be allowed to do that, right?
I
And
would
like,
just, yeah, what I would say to you is, I think you're being overly cautious about a hypothetical that doesn't seem to actually fit reality that well. Like, we
Not
can
only
always invent hypotheticals where, like, we think of a magical human that has a certain property that just seems absurd to us. And obviously, in principle, assuming such an entity actually exists, we would like be mindful of that. But then when we're talking about like applied ethics, when we're talking about how we apply it in the real world, I think you're trying too much to envision a case that just doesn't exist in order to justify the principle of it, which
sure,
is probably just like blinding you a little bit, so to
sure,
say.
more than
I
that, this your
oh,
heuristic not only like is trying to account for people who like don't really exist in the real world, it's like ignoring people who do exist in the real world, right? You're ignoring a good number
so
of people who would be
I
determined like mentally sound, who would just make bad decisions, right? Humans are like irrational all the time. So we can say that there's a way more likely to be this person that says that like that for whatever reason has made like the irrational decision that they don't need their eyes, that they're like that they like it makes them horny, that XYZ, versus this idea of a person who like somehow their eyes make them so dysphoric that it would actually be better for them to just like gouge out their eyes.
sure. So I think that for the reasons I've given so far, I think the reason why I like to frame it like this personally is because I think it is a more effective way to explain it to people that don't already agree with my view. I and that's just and I you might think that's wrong, and that's fine. I would implore you to attempt to debate this also with Max or
I,
whatever.
I I don't really care
But
about your framing, right? I'm fine with you using a heuristic when talking to Max. I'm telling you that your heuristic is bad.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess like our conclusion would just be that we think that framing is bad. My personal advice to you, Dario, would be try and use instead like the medical argument of like, yeah, look, there are people that are like that. We would just identify that and then help them in this way.
Yeah, but like you're basically telling me to do something which I know for a fact doesn't work because I've seen it not work
So I'm
multiple
I
curious,
mean,
do you think it?
you've seen some people fail, right? But this is the second part of the
people.
debate that I wanted to move on to, right? One, I think that like you're just like you're using heuristics that you don't believe in, which are like, or maybe not that you don't believe in, that are bad and less going to be less convincing to, especially to somebody like Max. And two, that you like are
Yeah,
ignoring
but that's
things
the
that
part I
Rose
don't
Wrist
agree
didn't
with.
account for, right? You can just reference like Rose Wrist, I think, did a good enough job like fighting with the empirics. And what I can argue on is like whether there's a conspiracy, right? Let's debate the efficacy of like or the likelihood of this
Okay,
conspiracy,
let's
and
role play.
that would be an
Let's
argument that
role
you could
play.
have.
Let's
Okay,
role play. I'll be Max and you'll be me. Okay. I think there's
okay.
a trans cult that's taken over the medical community.
Why?
Why?
Because everybody's fucking afraid to have a dissenting opinion on trans issues. Like, if you go out into the world, if you look at on social media, if you look at like every single person in the fucking Twitch chat, nobody
That's
wants
not
to have.
medical. That's social media. We're in the
Kami,
medical
allow
communities.
phenomics. Allow phenomics.
Okay.
I
Sure,
Phenomics
what
go.
would you say?
That's a fine line. I would also just say like my initial response or my intuitive response was to say that like the that's just not true. 60% of people disagree that like you can change your gender with the that you were assigned at birth. They think that like you can't be a woman if you were assigned male at birth.
What's your point?
that 62% of people disagree with this, and they talk about it, right? There's plenty of conservative figures who make a ton of fucking money talking about
Have you
this.
seen
It's insane.
have you seen on social media and the way that people act? Like you get banned on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, like
People on
everywhere.
social
If you
media
have
all the
dissenting
time say transphobic shit, right? Like you
and
can,
they get banned, like
I,
the biggest figures, they get banned for
they
saying
get banned for saying shit like tranny. They don't get banned for like arguing against trans people. Maybe if you talk about like Twitch, one of the most left-wing spaces in the world, right? But nobody gets banned on Twitter for arguing against trans rights. Nobody get banned on YouTube for arguing against trans rights.
They
This is
do.
like
They
insane.
do all the time, all the time.
And name a single example.
Literally, like who's that conservative, big conservative? Like Lips of TikTok was banned on Facebook the other
For
day.
fucking harassing people and doxing people? No, Libs of TikTok wasn't just banned for like being conservative or having like bad issues on trans people. They were banned for like bad behavior that would have been banned if a left winger did it to like a cis person.
This is all part of it, right? I have talked to countless people in my email. Like I've gotten so many emails from people, from doctors who say they are afraid to talk about trans issues and have dissenting opinions, right? I don't know of any other opinion. Like if I'm a doctor and I go into a room and say, "Oh,
Do you think that
I
your
have a-"
email might have a sample bias?
No.
No, you don't think that your email, the types of people who are going to email you, might be a different type of person than the average person, or
I
then
just
that might
want to
be
say Mr. Girl would
misrepresentative
not
of the
say
entirety
no.
of the
He
field?
would say yes, but it still
No.
shows a trend. Okay.
No. No,
This is ridiculous. You're insane.
I think that people.
You think every single doctor or all sorts of different?
I think I have a very progressive audience. I have many progressive people who watch me. I have conservative. I have people from all over.
That's fine. I didn't say that you have like a sorry. The fact that you have a progressive audience has nothing to do with this, right? If your audience is going to have
It does.
conservative,
The opposite the way he means it.
right?
Technically, it does.
Advertise his channel as a centrist channel. I don't know why we're arguing if he's as progressive or not.
No, I'm saying I have people from all over the spectrum watching me, and I have
sure.
a lot
If you
of
have
You
people
just
from,
said you had mostly
email me.
progressives.
No,
you
I
don't
said
think
I
that you're
have-
going to have disproportionately transphobic people who like you enough to email you?
No.
Since you have like an open since the first time you appeared in like a major space was you arguing with Destiny on trans issues, you really don't think that at all?
I'm transphobic. I love.
And then with Vosh on trans issues?
I love trans people.
He argued
You
about
are
pedophilia with
transphobic. You're a piece of
Vosh.
shit.
I wanna help trans people. I love them.
Okay, so wait, hold on. I'm kind of interested to hear
I
this.
think I could pretend to be Mr. Girl better.
Yeah.
If you want to attack me like as a progressive and I'll be Mr. Girl,
I wanna.
I can do it because I think I know his beliefs better than all.
Oh no, I have a really good idea here. I just kind of want to like I want to throw this at you, Dario. Right? What about like these lines of argumentation wouldn't also work for anti-Semitic conspiracy theories? I think that's what Gami said in chat. It's like you also get banned for denying the Holocaust. You have to be Max. You have to be Mr. Girl.
Do you think the Holocaust happened, Max?
Yes,
Why?
because I know it happened.
Were you there?
Oh.
No, that's what the history.
Yes, he escaped.
What does academic
history books
literature
also
say about
say- wait,
cross-sex
hold on.
hormones and puberty blockers and gender dysphoria?
Family. I had family who died in the Holocaust. Okay.
How do you know they existed? How do you know you're not adopted? Did you see Did you see your mother give birth to you?
I think you're being obtuse right now.
I think you're
being
answer the
retarded.
simple question
Whoa.
to yourself.
I think you're memeing right now.
I'm not me, man. I'm 100% serious.
One more thing.
Listen, if you can't even agree that the trans cult exists, then I don't think we can have a.
I don't even know what the trans cult is. You've just said it's doctors, and then when I
very
asked what doctors, you said it's to
Very
Twitter
obvious.
people.
It's
And
very
also,
obvious.
I'd also like to add that some of the basically all of the doctors and PhDs you've spoken to, who are specialists in this field, like Dr. James Cantor, disagree with you on puberty blockers. Dr. James Cantor, who you had on your show like
Very
a month
obvious.
ago, had said that 12 years old is what it should be the ideal age for puberty blockers being administered, and you
If
just
you
meekly
can't-
said no, or you like
Okay,
deflected
got
it
it.
and address
Hey.
it.
Bringing up trans issues, and it's very obvious. and if you
I'm
don't believe that,
not. You just
I
can't
think
substantiate
guys-
it, Max.
Do you think the sky's blue?
So, I think to a third. I think
Defend that the sky is blue.
Well,
Unlike
yeah,
you
it
who
can
can't
change
defend your
color. It's
position.
the other thing. Sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's purple or orange
Dario.
looking.
an
Even
actual.
if the sky is blue, then we can't have a conversation.
I just said, yeah, it is.
Dario, here's a thing that you could have used if you went down this route with Mr. Girl. You had Destiny as a moderator. I don't think Destiny, given how many conspiracy theories he has debated, would allow Mr. Girl to just be like, oh, you think my emails are not biased? Okay, then this is just the end of the conversation. I think you should have used
But this
like
is what you don't.
Destiny as a moderator in
No,
this
but this
way.
is okay. But this is now I'm talking as Dario.
Yeah.
This is what you don't understand, and I understand everything what you're saying. Right? I understand everything that you're saying. All I'm saying is I don't think any of what you're doing is going to convince Max. It's going to convince the audience. It's going to make Max look dumb, maybe in front of Destiny. But he's already had these debates in front of his audience, in front of Destiny's audience. He's already had these debates with Destiny, like in this forum. Like all of these
Well,
things have already happened.
And
I
he's
think
won most
Destiny
of
did like
them.
a pretty poor job in that debate, right?
Even if
I
you
don't-
can't convince him, you have like thousands of people watching, and if you can convince them, I think that does more than just like
Yeah, but-
convincing Max. Although it would
yeah,
be
but I
ideal
want-
for him to change.
Sure, but
Even if your goal
what
is to convince Max, we have good evidence that like people feeling embarrassed about their positions, feeling like they've been ridiculed, like they feel dumb. We have like good empirical evidence that this makes them more likely to
I
change
think
their position.
one of the
I
points
don't
Dario
think
made
this
that
is
was
the
actually
case with
pretty good.
Max.
I don't know if
think
it was
this is the case
Dario or
with Max.
Destiny made this, but when they asked him, I forget what it was, but it was like if you could cut off like part of your penis, and he was like, he refused to answer. He was like, a DGG is gonna be really mad and post like a thread about how fucking stupid I am. I think you should have attacked him more on that because he's so insecure. Like, if he sees like a Destiny Reddit post about him, he goes insane and he stopped reading the subreddit because of
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, if he gets upset, that's like
to be
good
clear,
evidence that he's more likely to change his mind later, right?
to be clear, to what you just said, Gami. I just want to, for the record, I made a funny joke about that, and I said, "Is the Reddit community in your walls right now?" And I thought that was a banger.
I saw that.
No,
I
That would have
saw
been
that.
fine if you
But
were
I
making
would've
like
just-
an argument where you
he's
could have like
super
actually gotten
insecure.
to that, but like instead you made arguments that like nobody like agreed with, that didn't make him look dumb. He didn't get that ridicule feeling,
that's
right?
fine.
He might have had Reddit in his. You might have
Sure.
like made a joke about him having Reddit in his walls, but Reddit wasn't
Sure.
actually in his walls after that debate.
Dario, rhetorically, I think when you make a joke like that, you need to emphasize it more. Like, for example, I think if Sin made such a joke, they would be like, is Reddit in your walls right now? Come on, Max. What the fuck is wrong with you? Is Reddit actually in your walls right now? Is it in the room with us? What are you talking about? Can you please turn on your camera and show me where Reddit is right now in your room? I just want to see them. You know,
Sure.
something
I
like
think,
that.
listen, okay, I understand. I think the main disagreement, and this is what I also thought coming in, right, is that you think that there are better ways to do the debate with Max than I do, right? And you might also think I did poorly. That's fine, right? But I think
Yeah,
at
we're
the end of
arguing
the
about
day-
that.
I think most people.
You have to
think
defend your
that.
position, not just
No,
repeat the
can I?
the difference.
Let Dario finish, please.
I mean, like, listen, are we chill in here, or like, do you all fucking hate me or whatever? Like,
No,
I don't
no,
hate you.
no.
I just think you're a terrible debater, at least on this
Sure.
topic.
sure, that's fine.
I debated him in DMs and got more concessions than you did. I'm just say there's a biological element to being gender dysphoric, which I don't think you're even close to doing.
No, wait. He said that in the debate.
He says it's a biological inherent. Like what? I didn't hear him say that. Let me
Well, but
open
that
the
doesn't.
transcript.
But none of that changes his argument, right?
I mean, I think it does, because by saying that it has some biological basis, he would have to concede by virtue
Well,
of that there's a spectrum of
no.
experiences and that there are some
No, he
people who
said-
would be benefit by it.
Yeah, but he said sure. So to be clear, what he is saying is that he believes that gender dysphoria is a real condition that people have, right? Like
I know, but he doesn't say it's biological in your debate.
Yes,
That's the thing.
he says it's like a real biological thing people experience. But
He
what
did not
just-
say. Oh, that's not what he means. He means like it's in it, like you're born with some traits that can make it like more likely to manifest. He doesn't mean that it's like, you're a human being with biology.
Okay.
Just to check with
Let
you,
me just
Dario.
finish before you criticize.
Okay.
Sure. I feel like whenever this is the same thing that I feel like happened a lot with the Max gun. Well, like I'm gonna start a sentence, and then before my sentence is finished, you cut in, and then I don't get to say the part afterwards, which responds to the sentence.
Finish.
Sure. So what I was trying to say is, right, Max's argument is that he can grant every single argument you make about gender dysphoria, and that's fine. What he would say is he believes that getting SRS and hormones just isn't helping you. Right?
Do you
He
mean
believes,
HRT? Oh no, sexual reassignment surgery.
Sex change and hormones.
I have a
Yeah.
question for you, Dario. In the debate with Mr. Girl, maybe you can remind me. Didn't he say something akin to like, "Oh, I would be more convinced of this if you could show me like brain scans of like trans people or something like that"?
He
Didn't he
didn't say
at
that in
one
this.
point?
He said that in his first convo with Destiny. He said if he said nothing short of an M or F being imprinted in the brain would convince him that's like,
he also
he's really
Wait.
flimsy. He like pivots about a lot.
no,
this a
he
lot.
also said it with like the brain in the trash can argument. He basically says that if it was the case that we could by 100% like certainty determine that it was 100% medically necessary for somebody to transition, there was nothing else that could possibly be done. Like if we had that information, then he would grant that they should transition, right? But he just doesn't believe that at all, like not even close.
So you can argue on those grounds, right? Point. That's why it's like also just really quickly, I want to point out it's gender affirmation surgery is the current clinical term, not sexual
I'm not
reassignment.
calling it that. That's some like soy PC bullshit. It's like only in the
Gummy,
past like
Gummy.
The
We can
medically
debate this
proper
with
term.
phonomics some other time. We can
I'm
set up a
sorry to
debate between you
I'm
two.
sorry the word sex change offends you.
I didn't say it did. I said this is the medically proper term.
I know some surgeons who say SRS still, so I don't know. Do you have like
No, transgender infighting moment. Transgender infighting moment.
Because
I
they're in
also-
your audience, Gami.
I didn't hear what Dario
Gummy,
said.
Neither do I.
some other debate. Some other
Okay,
debate.
I'm down to host you guys having the debate right after this one if you want. I just let's try to not waste Dario's time. That's understandable.
Stupid.
That's understandable. I don't want to waste Dario's time. He's here for a different discussion.
So yeah, phonomic.
So I think, I mean, ultimately, I mean, you can agree or disagree. Right? This is the way that I feel. I feel like basically you wanted me to go in and have the same convo he had with Rose Wrist and he had with Destiny after our convo, right? So if you watch all of it, I believe Destiny like summarized the position that I think you and also maybe Destiny holds. I don't know if you entirely agree, but I think you agree. Like that's like a good argument to bring. I think Destiny brought that argument to Max just after our convo, and he also like did it very like succinctly, like in a way, and it also again didn't work, right? So like, and that was basically the thing I'm trying to hammer home is he's heard that many times from people who are better at delivering it than I am, and specifically what I tried to do was bring a different type of argument, and yeah, I mean obviously, I mean it I didn't achieve what I wanted to, but
I
yeah.
have a question for you. Why did you avoid when he brought up trans children or gender dysphoric children? When I say trans in this context, I mean gender dysphoric. Why did you like avoid and be like, it's too iffy, I don't want to talk about gender dysphoric kids
Sure,
and puberty
because
blockers?
Sure, because I think then we can get sidetracked into like a bunch of different stuff that I don't think is like necessary to have. Like so I think it's easier to convince somebody that it's okay for like people somebody who's like 25-year-olds to have like hormones or SRS or whatever than it is to convince them that somebody who is like 13 can have it. Right? So it was just because of that.
Well,
I mean,
I don't think most people are arguing for sex changes for like 13-year-olds. I think we argue for puberty blockers and then hormones
yeah,
after a
I
few
mean,
years. But with
sure,
that,
I was
I
just
would say that when you wait say like I don't want to discuss it above like 25 or 18 or whatever age you draw the cup line at, you're implicitly conceding that it's like not an established medical practice and that clinicians and patients aren't like adequately informed enough to make the decision to do so. Which helps his argument immensely.
Dario, can I ask you something to just reflect on one of your past points? Well,
You don't agree with that?
Yeah, I
You-
don't think that I'm
Why?
conceding. I just don't think so. I don't know.
yeah, but why don't you think so?
I don't think that's how words work, right? Like,
Oh, okay. Can I ask you something about one of the things you said earlier, Dario? You said that you think that the things necessary is you have to be of sound mind, you have to have thought about it for a while, and you have to be able to consent, right? Do you think children can consent?
I think.
Oh
we
god.
can- and this is another reason why I didn't wanna have that. I mean, if you're gonna do that, then I mean, it's just not a conversation I wanna
If he tries
Oh,
to
I think the answer is no. It's one word. Just say no. Please just say no. I'm begging you to say no.
and children consent, Dario.
Just say no.
No, children can't consent.
Based. We don't. Thank you so much.
The argument when it goes to children
But it
and
isn't.
blockers is that they aren't just like choosing. They're not going to like a plastic surgeon getting like
Exactly.
implants. They're going
Yes,
to a
I
trained
agree.
professional who's like prescribing them a
But
treatment. It's the same thing
you
as
asking
giving
that question,
insulin.
you asking that question in that way, you realize that's a malicious way to ask the question to try and get a gotcha. Because when you
No, it's really easy to not get gotcha'd by do you think children can consent?
come on,
Dario, to
I would
be
just say
fair,
not to most things. Would be mine.
Dario,
if a random person on the internet asks you, do you think children can consent? Do you think they're talking about like blockers or hormone treatments, or do you think the implication there is a little bit bigger than that?
I
think-
it depends on the context.
Yeah. If somebody
Yeah.
like came up to you randomly, there's like that's different, right? If they just say, "Do you think children can consent?" Usually, when we're
Sure.
talking about consent, we're talking about in a sexual context.
Sure, but if I
we've
go like
obviously
this,
not
but if
been
I
talking
go
about.
like
We've been
this,
talking about, but we've obviously been talking about a medical context for the last like 2 hours,
Yes.
right?
yes, but if okay, and this might be me being a sensitive soy boy, okay? But if somebody is like, Dario, do you think children can consent? Just say, yeah. Do you think children can? I'm like, I don't want to answer that question in the way that you're asking.
Nobody
right?
said just say. Actually,
We're saying we're begging you to say no. We're just please don't say that children can consent.
Also, I have a question for Dario. So at the start of this, I was seeing you guys argue about like the NAP and like libertarian stuff, and now when I came back, I missed like an hour of it because I was like cooking and shit. How did you go from like arguing for like libertarian shit to then being like I'm kind of a utilitarian and it's been like 2 hours?
basically, he's more like a liberty utilitarian kind of.
Oh, the freedom one.
Sure, I don't know what you want to, I guess, call it. or
I just
whatever.
wanted to know.
You can watch the conversation afterwards, Gami. But basically, he admitted that that's more like just like a heuristic, not like an absolute principle that he would be willing to sacrifice all of humanity for.
Yeah, he just moved off it.
Basically, I think freedom in general is the best way to achieve like
Well-being.
happiness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing you did in the debate that now I'm remembering that was also pretty bad was when Max was talking about how, like, what if you woke up tomorrow on a surgeon's table and they were trying to cut your dick off? And he was trying to say that's, like, an equivalent to going through, like, you have to get, like, 2 or 3 letters from, like, a psychologist for the sex change operation. You have to, like, it's not just, like, you one and done. They don't just, like, hand out, like, cookies. Which, like, I thought that looked really bad when he was like, what if you woke up tomorrow and they were, a surgeon told you they were gonna cut your dick off? How do you feel, Dario? And that's such a dumb question, and like I just wish you would have harped on that one more too. You need to argue with the premise of questions like that, because like just saying yes or no, it gives him ground, which you should do.
Argue that question like you argue the question: should children be able to consent? Okay, just that's the route we're asking for.
Like if he says that, you need to argue like. You need to say why that's a question that's like inaccurate or not like productive to discuss. It's not related.
I don't like that. I don't like that way of arguing. Like, if somebody's gonna ask me a question, I'm gonna answer it first, and like if they want to take it somewhere else.
Except for can children consent?
Yes, except very extreme.
He's libertarian. You have to cut him some slack.
I think this is an extreme case of if
exactly.
you woke up on a fucking doctor's table and they're like, I'm gonna cut your dick off in 10 minutes without like any knowledge. I think that's even more extreme than can children consent.
Listen. Okay, okay. Listen. I mean, you might not agree, like you might not give a fuck or whatever. I guess you're anonymous on the internet, relatively.
I'm not really anonymous. I've had people try to dox me.
Sure, but like, I don't know, whatever. I don't wanna talk about like stuff pertaining to children in general, because I think that's where most of the harassment comes from people online, is towards people who talk about like trans kids and whatever, and I don't wanna like even approach that topic. And for that reason, like I don't wanna talk about like anything to do with that, because I don't want to be called the groomer on the internet by random people, conservatives.
Sounds like Keppel should have done this debate. I think she might have done a little better.
Okay. I mean, if that's something you don't care about, whatever. I mean, that's.
I care about helping transsexual children more than I do care about if people call me a groomer, but that's just me.
Sure. I mean, that's fine, I guess.
Okay,
Let me ask you a question. If you could convert like 10,000 people from Destiny and Mr. Girl streams by getting called a groomer, would you do it?
No, probably not. I probably wouldn't
Oh
make
my
that
God.
sacrifice.
holy shit.
I mean,
I
you can
would-
just say that, right?
I would
don't
cut a
wanna-
pinky off if I could convince that many people of it.
Really?
Yeah, without hesitation.
Okay. Damn.
Based.
Yeah.
You're way braver than I am. Brave.
Thank you.
Or maybe
Oh,
just more utilitarian. We actually like live by our ethics.
Full offense, by the way, Dario. Were you joking when you said you were trans in this call? Like, because you got asked if you take testosterone replacement therapy and you said no.
No, I wasn't. Why do you ask?
How are you transitioning?
What do you mean?
You said you were trans. How are you trans in any material sense?
Okay, I don't.
We don't. If you don't want to talk about this, we don't have
He,
to.
he has to answer. No.
We don't.
No, I don't feel like having this conversation with Gami.
No.
He's just a cis guy who like puts heathen in his bio because he wants to sound woke and can't. Like, I don't get how you can come to. I'm just glad you didn't tell Mr. Girl that. Is all I'm gonna say.
Begging you some other time, Gammy. You can debate
Okay.
phonomics on this. You can debate phonomics right
I don't
afterwards.
want to. I have to cook
Yeah, because
rice.
you'll
I
get
haven't-
destroyed. You'll get
No, all I've
destroyed.
ate is a granola bar today. We can debate another time if you want.
Okay, if you want to get destroyed some other time. But yeah. Anyone got any other points for Dario?
Just say, yeah.
Well, I had like a statement I was gonna read. I was just waiting for.
Gami, tell me, how mean is that statement though?
It's not. It's more mean to his argument. I don't like insult him or anything in it.
Okay.
Dario, are you okay with Gami reading her statement?
Don't ask him
can I ask-
that.
can
He
I
has to
Ask for
listen.
for Dario's consent.
Can I ask Gami something?
Good. Dario hasn't thought about.
Okay,
What do you want?
can ask Gami.
Wait, there was like a really funny. Wait, maybe you can ask yours first, and then I'll ask you after.
No, ask. You want to ask. You want to ask. Answer. You gotta ask if you want to.
Sure, I had a really funny interaction. It was something like you said that I was comparing getting like trans surgery to getting your eyes gouged out. Like
Yeah,
what-
Mr. Girl made that comparison, and you just let
Yeah,
it slide. We're
no,
like,
no.
yeah, I think you should let him. I think you should let them do that. When it's a conversation about medical ethics. What
Wait,
really fundamentally.
Wait, didn't you say that I made the comparison?
You implicitly make a comparison when you entertain the idea. It's like the can children consent idea. Like you are entertaining the idea. You are implicitly saying children can have sex if you like say children can consent to everything.
So if
It's the
somebody-
same principle.
So if somebody asks you, do you think these two things are comparable, and you say no, am I implicitly comparing them?
You didn't say that you entertained the idea and didn't say they weren't comparable in that discussion. You were like, yeah, I think they should be able to do that.
Do you want the timestamp? Do you want the timestamp?
No, we just talk.
Okay. So you get destroyed, and you didn't want to. Okay, fair enough.
I just don't really care about this, but I think if you ask, if we polled Mr. Girl's audience, if we polled Mr. Girl's audience and asked, do you think Dario is okay with children getting their eyes gouged out, I think 80% would say.
You know you were wrong. You said something that was actually wrong by all metrics. You don't want to look at the evidence. You just want a virtue signal.
A screen share. Screen share if you want me to see it.
Sure. You want to go through the first 15 minutes?
No,
no, just
I'm not watching 15 minutes of content.
What the fuck? Just go into the transcript and Control F and search for eyeball or something. Then you'll find it.
Wait.
You said you had the timestamp, right?
15 minutes? Apparently not. He doesn't have it. Also, in the first 15 minutes, what you wanted to watch, I wanted to say, how many of Mr. Girl's videos did you actually watch? Because you couldn't surmise his beliefs. Did you watch anything other than the Rose Risk conversation?
Yeah, I watched like 7 or 8 of them.
That's not all his gender videos.
Do you think you should? Okay. Be able to.
I think you shouldn't say that you
like
have.
then
if
obviously
you
you're also
Wait,
gonna
wait.
think that trans people
Can you
also
hear?
shouldn't get breast surgery.
Yeah.
When you say shouldn't,
I would really.
like is my position? I think that like
Yeah.
Do you think they're the same?
No. There we go. Mike, did you hear that? Do you want to repeat it?
Where's that? The eyeballs. I thought we were talking about eyeballs. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You said you had a timestamp for eyeballs, not whatever the fuck this shit is. I don't know what this is.
Okay.
You just showed me like 10-second clip of you like.
I understand you're nervous. Okay, I understand you're nervous.
I'm not nervous at all.
Okay.
You're the one who was like having a mental breakdown because Synth wasn't like handing you with kids' gloves. And like if you watch Synth's other videos, you very much were.
Okay. So look at this. Okay. Then obviously you're also gonna think that trans. Sure.
Now we're talking purely ethics /
narrative.
I would look so much better if I just had like.
I don't think anybody should
breasts.
get plastic surgery.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So like, if you don't believe that, then I mean, obviously from that follows that I mean.
No, because trans people and the progressive narrative believes that gender reassignment surgery is.
But I don't care about the progressive narrative.
Holy shit! Are you showing this on purpose?
Like I'm talking about.
I don't know. Where's
but
the eyeball part?
I zoomed in on. Okay, I'm zoomed in on it, right?
I thought I was getting owned, Dario. I thought you had a clip right up here to own me. What is this? You're just like fucking like.
Is this the way you do? Is this the way where you don't want to like listen to the clip?
You don't have the clip. This is where. Dario, look. I'll look on my end. I think I can find this better than you.
About that. I thought you'd watch this. Okay, we're talking.
I am watching it.
You just said. No, you guys were talking about plastic surgery. He said that.
We're talking about the
plastic surgery.
This is a continuation of the eyeball thing.
You're talking about plastic surgery right now.
That part. Show us the part with the eyeball. You said this is a continuation, then it happened before or after.
Yeah. So like, if you don't believe that, then I mean, obviously from that follows that I mean.
What?
Because trans people and the progressive narrative believes that
eyeballs are discussed 4 minutes before this, Dario.
But I don't care
I just
about
looked in the
progressive
transcript. It's at 12:45.
What do you think I'm trying to show you?
Bro, you bluffed hard.
In refutation because of the you were saying this in refutation to the fact I said you implicitly concede about eyeballs.
Yes. So you're.
And this is just some shit about plastic surgery. I don't care about this. I care about the eyeballs. What happened to eyeballs? Why are we not discussing eyeballs? Do you want me to screen share for you? I can do that if you need.
I see what kind of audience this is. Okay.
There are like 10 people watching.
Yeah, the audience is not dogpiling you. Are they being mean in the I'll read the chat.
No, I'm saying.
Okay, let me see. Oh fuck, this was. I just closed the link.
Yeah, think about the chatters are nice.
I was referring to Gami. When I said the audience.
I'm not streaming.
No, I didn't.
You mean Gami is? Are you saying Gami is the audience? But Gami's a participant. Gami's here right now.
Yes. Audience.
Do you mean the audience of you? The audience of your the stream you're watching?
I'm a participant of Jesus Christ.
Like I'm referring to you people as the audience.
Whoa! What do you mean by you people?
People mean Dario. You got something I gotta say to us?
Good one.
Can you guys hear this?
I can't hear what. No, I can only hear you speak.
I can hear the
clicking. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
No, we were watching the eyeballs clip. Why are you so timid now? You wanted to watch it really bad. Let's watch.
From like gender dysphoria, people who want to take hormones, get surgery, stuff like that. I think that's where sort of the body of the disagreement is. I think I've boiled it down to two base positions where I think actually the disagreement lies, and I think all other positions flow from there. Where's the eyeball thing? So I think
it's in 25 seconds or so.
Wait, but I thought you were showing me the eyeball thing. Why am I watching something else?
Okay, I'll help you. Don't worry.
Flow from. I don't know if you want to talk about that or can maybe.
Do you think you should be able to get your eyeball removed surgically if the idea makes you horny?
Yeah.
Really?
That was an epic joke. Yeah. The jokey delivery.
No one.
It was so funny.
It was a joke. I thought it was serious, and I think most of Max's audience did, and I think most of Destiny's did. If you're being asked, like,
it was a big Giga Chat moment. Okay.
No one laughed. No one thought it was a joke. Max didn't. Destiny didn't. The audience
didn't. You need a pretty high IQ to understand that type of humor. To be fair.
That's so true. So true.
You to think that is a joke.
I think you need a
and like, look,
IQ.
I'm watching Max's chat right now. If you guys can see, and like, people are like, "Holy weird." I don't think anyone's caught this based. There's one who agrees with you apparently.
Based. That was the
Bit the bullet.
Yes, yes. That was the person I was talking to, the person who wrote based. Okay, that's
Who?
my guy.
Okay,
Oh.
I don't see this
He-
as
Latest-
really.
Mr.
Mr.
Clearly
Girl
didn't
Dub.
think you were
Oh, here we got
joking, though,
Mr. Girl
right? They
Dub.
agreed with you, but they didn't.
Yeah,
think
look,
you
it's
were
all the
joking.
Mr. Girl
Interesting.
people coming in. They're like, what a fucking retard. No one thinks you're joking. And they,
Wait,
like,
nobody-
even when they say you bit that
The
bullet, I
definition of
mean,
self-harm in that context. Wait, is nobody's very-
Most sane trans defender. Oh no, this makes us look so fucking bad.
this
Yeah.
is.
Oh no.
based, so
It was 6
based,
million eyeballs. It's
So-
they
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
cookie eyeballs.
So
It's like when
based,
Fuentes
so
says the
based.
cookie shit. He's like, I was just kidding, guys. I was just kidding. I totally
So
wasn't saying
based.
anything else.
Listen.
Got me. All that Dario say.
Agreed with Dario.
Clearly,
Oh.
kind of audience, okay? For my
I don't think anyone is your
sophisticated
kind of
level
audience because they didn't think
Listen.
you were joking.
Listen. For my
Maybe you and your
sophisticated level
mom
of
and like your
humor-
brother or sister, whoever you have, might have
Yeah.
agreed with you, but no one else did.
Mom, brother, sister. As long as Dario's got the stream open in another tab, he's got more viewers than I do.
Listen, okay. Listen, okay. For my sophisticated level of humor, you need you need something else.
That was.
Oh, El Ario. Look what we got over here, Lario.
Oh.
I think we got a consensus in the audience. We got like 2 pro Darios, and everyone else is like, Mr. Girl just fucking dumped this guy.
And for the record, they're pro Dario on for the record, they're pro Dario on the basis of that being based that he bit the bullet, not it being a joke. Like holy shit, dude, nobody thought it was a joke.
Should people be allowed to
You got me there.
self-harm?
You got me there.
So, what's about my tweet you disagreed with, since you like really wanted to bring it up?
Yeah, I already told. Right. So you said that I believe that those are comparable things, and I didn't very clearly.
You let him make the comparison and didn't fight it out. You're just like, yeah, this is if I was like, what's a good
No,
analogy?
like
If I
even-
was like, if I was like, we should be allowed to vaccinate
even
6
if you-
million people, and then someone was like, should we be
So
allowed
if
to
you listen-
genocide 6 million people? And then I was like, yes,
if you-
that would be like fucking. It's not answering. It's not
If you listen
arguing at the
to-
fundamental
if you listen to
matter.
what Steven said right afterwards as well.
I'm not
like,
talking
but-
to Steve. I'm talking to Dario.
Yeah, I'm
that's
explaining
all that
what happened in the
matters.
conversation. Clearly,
I
you're
watched
having
it.
some-
I watched
clearly
4
you-
hours of it, and then I watched 2
Sure.
with Synth and
Clearly, you have
neoliberal.
some issues. Clearly, you have some issues understanding when people talk to
Hey,
you.
I was
right?
there
I'm
too.
trying to explain. Right. So, like when Steven.
I wish
asked
you have
me-
explained this much, Mr. Girl.
Sure. So when Steven asks me afterwards and says, when Max is continuing right with the eyeball thing or like the plastic surgery thing, like Steven is saying, no, Dario is saying, even if that was the case, right? Even if that was the case, as you say, Max, would you then believe it is wrong, right? And then we took the conversation from there, right? So that was the point I was trying to make. I was trying to make, even if it was a comparable case, which I don't think it is, right? I still think we might find like we can battle on those grounds, right? That was the
Then
point.
why did you let him make the comparison if you don't think it's comparable?
Like, what do you mean?
You,
What do you
you,
mean?
it's like when Dylan
should
Burns
I
fucking like
stop him
moderate
in
that
the
Lawrence
middle of his
Southern versus the
sentence?
Surfs thing. Should you
Wait.
what?
Should I stop him in the middle of his sentence? Like, what do you mean? Why do I let
I
him
mean,
make
maybe
the
if you need time
comparison?
to think, which you clearly didn't. Like I think
don't
you should
even
have
have to-
thought through what you said more. If you're at the point where you're
Wait.
comparing like peer-reviewed medical surgeries to like fucking cutting off limbs for no reason, you've already lost. You've already lost when you like let him make that comparison and let it slide. Even if like 10 minutes later you backpedaled it, that doesn't matter. It's like when Keffel said
You're
Destiny is a
just
rapist, and
using
then 20
terms,
minutes
you have
later
no idea what you're
backpedaled.
saying, and,
What
like, you're
term? What
completely
term don't
going
I
off
know?
From like every single person who was in that convo who clearly understood what I was saying, right? Even
I
Max,
just showed you the fucking
even
chat.
Max-
No one knew what you apparently meant.
even the people in that convo clearly understood what I was saying, and even
No.
Max went in and even Max clarified after.
Max thought it was a joke.
No, Max.
Oh,
clarified.
Okay.
I mean, do you have a hard time understanding? Like, I don't understand.
Just you, Dario.
Time
I'm having a
understanding how
hard time
people perceive
understanding your
you.
inability to communicate. Yeah.
I think this is a perfect case of
Of ableism.
okay, motivated ableism. Yeah, motivated reasoning. Ableism.
What's our motivation?
for all day.
Dario derangements.
Yeah.
True.
I need to know
Listen,
more about
I
you
didn't
to be
think-
deranged.
listen,
You're just a guy who
listen,
sucks at
I
doing
didn't think-
trans
I
stuff.
didn't think that people still had Dario derangement syndrome, but apparently it is the case.
Oh, I have a
Yes,
question.
but
Do you
Dario
disagree
derangement
that Demon
system
Mama could
can
debate this
not
better?
watch this debate.
Because Demon Mama's debate shit
I
like this,
enjoyed
and
the
if you're not
convo.
talking,
I
oh
think
my
that's
god,
gonna
what a
be it for
pussy!
today. Listen,
Such a
I
pussy.
enjoyed the convo. If you have anything productive to say,
What? I have one thing. I have one thing. One thing. Very.
Yeah.
No. I had a really funny thing to say.
What were you gonna say? Say.
I was gonna ask him. I was gonna ask him since he's got like Dario derangement syndrome. I was just like just focus test with him. Do you think that like post-traumatic synth disorder sounds like a good name?
Oh my god.
But he just left. He just left.
He's so sensitive. Like the thing that fucking was insane to me was how like he brought up that eyeball stance of gosh, and then first of all he was showing 4 minutes ahead of it. Oh, did he say something? I wonder if I got blocked. He just left.
Dario left the group.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Damn, that's hilarious. He's so sensitive. I thought it was crazy how he said he was gonna show me the eyeballs thing and then sent me like something 5 minutes ahead of it. And I was like, hold on, I'll open the transcript. And he's like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Do you guys agree with me that Demon Mom would have done better than him?
Oh yeah.
'Cause I totally think she would have. Demon Mom was like a pretty bad debater, but she wouldn't have let him fucking try to gouge out your eyeballs. I know she wouldn't have.
All right.
I also thought it was funny how when I said that I think he left because he knew he did worse than Demon Mama.
That was that
I
Jesus.
didn't even get treatment. Let me show you guys. I had this huge statement I wrote up when you guys were talking. I had this whole thing. I had this.
Whoa.
And then I had this. I was gonna be like, address this. How he started the convo talking about being how you dress when that was what Mr. Girl came to talk about, and he also said that people should be able to dress however they want. And then I kind of made the mRNA vaccine thing, but not for very much. And then I wanted to ask him this, but it seems he backpedaled on this position a little bit when you talked to him when I wasn't watching.
Yo, yeah.
Whole
He.
And
I mean,
I think he got scared because you guys, I like left when he was like starting to cry about how you were like hurting his feelings. I was like,
I was gonna go fucking insane. Oh my fucking god.
You were meaner to Rose wrist or
Rose mullet.
What's her? Yeah, yesterday, and she didn't leave because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Dario, like it's like you train with kids' gloves and he thinks he's getting like the shit kicked out of him. I don't know why. He has post-traumatic synth disorder.
All right. Is there anything any of you three want to say before I cut the stream, or do you think we can end it here?
I want to make some rice, but what I would say is you should clip the part where he brings up eyeballs. Like, make a clip and post it on your Twitter, and I'll retweet it. Whatever makes him, like, look the worst.
That's a good.
Use that to advertise it.
So much Dario derangement.
Yeah. Dario has, like, I think it's ableist, honestly, to make fun of him. Because I think it's some, like, neurological condition that maybe he can't consent to things like conversation.
So I didn't want to use this as like an attack against Dario, but I wanted to ask him this, right? Does he think that there's any neurological reason, right? Like maybe ASD or something for why he has trouble understanding how other people perceive him? But it's just obviously it sounds so much like a jab. I can't do that.
People in Mr. Girl's comments were saying it might be because it's English second language. But I don't want to say that because I don't want to sound racist.
I don't think it's part of it. Romania liberal has no trouble understanding, so I don't think it's an ESL thing.
Yeah. I think it's. I honestly think it's just a not understanding your own arguments thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he's really a like libertarian, utilitarian, or whatever he said?
No, he just pivoted.
He seemed like yeah, in the debate, he was like full libertarian, like nothing that doesn't hurt anyone else.
His entire Twitter is filled to the brim. Every time if you look on Twitter from DarioRahm and just use the word utilitarianism, it's just him bitching about utilitarianism.
Yes.
He's just, if he changed his mind, I think that's a good thing. During the course of the discussion, if he changed his mind, that's good. It's just that
I think he just changed his mind because he doesn't know how to defend himself, and it's probably he's gonna do like how Vosh will take people's arguments without understanding them and be like, this is the consequentialism of this shit that I don't even know. I think he's gonna do that in a future debate or like talk if he does one again.
maybe, yeah.
If he's ever on a panel discussing this shit, I'm gonna ambush him like how people.
Whoa! Wait till we're off stream to plan your ambush.
Yeah. No. I want to be inside his walls like Reddit, or not like Reddit is. Like Reddit's inside Mr. Girls. I want to be inside his head. So he'll be like fucking Steven Crowder asking every debate, are you having his dad call people, be like, make sure, what's the guy from the Majority Report? Sam Cedar doesn't answer.
I love that shit.
It's
All right.
Funny.
All right, I'm going to cut the stream here. Those of you who are watching, I think that you're probably all subscribers, but if you're not, click on the button anyways. I'm going to stop